Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable, see playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 401, Forced Arrogance. All these supreme disciples, including Finley, were confused. No matter how strong Zen was and how great his talent, Zen was still a nature creature in essence. Even though he had successfully challenged cultivators at higher levels, he was still a nature creature. He should not be able to go beyond the limit of nature creatures. For example, one of these conditions was that nature creatures could not fly. This limitation was related to the principle of life vitality. Only after entering the illuminating soul realm could cultivators fly and stay in midair by burning their life vitality. In this way, no matter how high a nature creature's jump, he could not stay in the air and would eventually fall to the ground. There had never been a nature creature breaking this rule from the earliest times to the present day. But what had they just seen? Zen had stayed steady in the air after he avoided the shot from Finley. They could not believe their eyes, and they could not understand this incredible feat. Their expressions also revealed their complicated inner feelings. Unlike the people below, Zen was very calm as he levitated in the air. His lips moved slightly as a subtle smile danced at the corner of his mouth. He lowered his voice and spoke to Tia via her token. I didn't expect that you would be kind to me. However, the smile was wiped from Zen's face by Tia's response. If you die like this, how will my hate be relieved? Tia chuckled, I prefer to torture you slowly and gradually. After today, you will come here and challenge the elite disciples of Cloud Hall every day. Wouldn't that be more interesting than a quick death? Hearing this, Zen forced a wry smile. Although it was beneficial for him to have the support of a powerful cultivator at Cloud Hall, it really didn't have to be cultivated in this way. However, Zen did not have other choices. And his opponent did not give him much time to think about alternatives. Finley was surprised to see Zen fly, but that did not mean that he would let Zen go easily. Flying was a normal ability for cultivators at the Illuminating Soul Realm, not to mention that Finley was at the 9th level of the Illuminating Soul Realm. After a brief moment of surprise, Finley recovered and focused on his battle with Zen. He turned his weapon towards Zen. However, Zen was incredibly agile in his movements. He effortlessly dodged Finley's attack. Finley chased Zen around the area for a while. Unfortunately, he lashed out with his weapon dozens of times but could not injure Zen. Finley had not figured out how and why Zen was so agile. A light ray had cut through the space and connected Zen's body to Morphin's hands in the other place. This invisible ray allowed Morphins to control Zen like a puppet. In this situation, it would be impossible for Finley to catch up with Zen. Even if he could, Finley was no match for Zen. After all, Morphin's puppet controlling skills had reached the legendary fusion realm, which meant that he could transfer his strength to Zen during the fight. So, Finley was not combating with Zen alone. Instead, he was fighting against Zen and Morphins. After seeing this chase and running match for some time, Tia stretched and yawned before saying, okay, that's enough for today. We'll let Zen provoke them again later. It is better to keep the disciples fuming. Otherwise, there will be no interesting play tomorrow. Morphins nodded as his rough fingers moved dexterously, controlling Zen's actions as per Tia's order. Zen was like a puppet again. His helplessness was reflected in his eyes. Zen couldn't do anything, and he even couldn't control his mouth. He shouted proudly, ha, ha, ha. Are you really the elites of Cloud Hall? I believe you are nothing. I will come here every day to accept your challenges. Let me see how strong you are. You idiots. The elite disciples of Cloud Hall had changed their minds about challenging Zen when they saw his super strength. However, Zen's haughty declaration had successfully motivated them to fight. They had encountered arrogant people before, but none had ever humiliated them to such an extent. As disciples of Cloud Hall, they were also very talented that they were considered geniuses. Fueled by their passion and confidence of their abilities, these disciples would not bear Zen's insults. For a moment, the gray building filled with agitated retorts from the disciples. However, their comments did not affect Zen. He broke the gate of the building and flew away. After hovering in the air for a while, Zen finally fell to the ground like a normal nature creature. Only at this moment could he regain control of his body. He felt speechless and helpless and shook his head slightly. He said to the token again, "Tia. Or should I call you young master? Could you stop playing with me like that? I beg the beautiful young lady to be merciful." However, Tia did not change her mind after hearing Zen's appeal. Her excited voice was transferred through the acoustic token. "No way. Rest for the remainder of the day. We will continue tomorrow morning." Zen wrinkled his face as he thought about his dilemma. He couldn't find a logical way to dissuade Tia. He felt as though he were Do, being needed by Tia in whatever shape she liked. Zen accepted his fate. After all, he also benefited from such practice. He had acquired a deep understanding of the malicious wheel of life and death after using it in actual combat this night. So, he did not rest, as Tia suggested. Instead, he cultivated diligently through the night. Then, early the next morning, he sensed a little energy wave close to him but did not get the chance to dodge it. When the energy entered his body, Zen trembled slightly before losing control of his body again. He then opened the door and ran toward the gray building. "Do you think it is necessary to be here so early?" he asked gloomily. Fortunately, Tia did not deprive Zen of his right to speak. He could only resist verbally. "I told you before, you need to go there every day," Tia replied calmly. By now, Zen had become famous throughout Cloud Hall for beating Frank and speaking audaciously to the other disciples of the elite house. The strength of the disciples of Elite House varied from the initial phase to the highest level of the illuminating soul realm. These young and energetic disciples felt angry when they heard Zen's words. How could a new disciple be so insolent? They wanted to teach him a lesson so that Zen would know the true extent of their strength and recant his insult. The gray building was initially used as an internal practice place for the disciples of Elite House. Not many would exercise there, as these disciples were either busy with their assignments or their cultivation. However, hundreds of cultivators were present in the gray building today. And most of them were between the 4th and 6th level of the illuminating soul realm. Few were between the 7th and 9th level of the illuminating soul realm. The disciples of Elite House had been selected from millions of cultivators. Everyone was exceptionally talented, at least in comparison to human-level talent. There were also some geniuses of Earth-level talent and a few disciples that had reached heavenly-level talent. Now, they stood in the gray building, chatting about Zen. "I want to see this nature creature. I have never encountered such an arrogant boy in my life. He hasn't arrived yet. Is he afraid of death, which is why he has not dared to come? I heard that this boy could fly even though he is only a nature creature. That is so strange. In my opinion, if that boy said he would come, then he will. I do not understand his plans, though. How does he benefit from offending the disciples of Elite House? Who knows? Some people are happy to speak nonsense. Everyone here today would be happy to beat him severely so that he will remember not to speak so pretentiously again." Just at this moment, another young man in brown linen entered. He was tall and strong. His shape was similar to Kenneth's. He had a broad forehead, and his eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. "Look, that is Fred. He has also come here. Oh my goodness, even the cultivator at the highest level of the illuminating soul realm is present today. Zen is going to die, right?" Someone who knew Fred Lee walked up to him and greeted him. "Hello, Fred. You also heard yesterday's challenge?" Fred nodded and smiled as he spoke. "Yes, I just finished one task, and have some free time. I heard a very arrogant disciple recently joined Elite House. So, I came here for some fun. I want to see who this boy is and why he is so arrogant." "Fred, why don't you teach him a lesson? The young guy is really crazy. He comes from a grade 2 sect in the Little Eastern region. He has no idea about the outer world. So, he thought he was the best of all the disciples and looked down upon all of us," a disciple told Fred angrily. However, Fred shook his head and said honestly, "Everyone has confidence. And many people are ready to challenge him. He will receive his lesson. He is just a nature creature. Even if I win, there will be nothing to blow off." Fred is right. He is just a nature creature. There is no need for Fred to challenge him. He doesn't deserve the chance to practice with Fred, the other disciple commented. "There he comes. Look." Zen finally appeared at the door of the gray building. Even though he was unwilling to move, his body was out of his control and stepped into the building. The disciples of Elite House glared at Zen with sharp eyes. Most of them were seeing Zen for the first time. Before today, Many of the disciples did not believe that Zen, with the strength of a nature creature, had defeated Frank. Now, as Zen stood before them, the disciples were surprised that the rumor was true. What was even more shocking was that Zen had not even reached the peak of the nature level. He was only at the 4th grade of the nature level. If Zen had not been so arrogant, most people would be amazed by Zen's strength. If Zen was so strong at this level, would he have the power to challenge cultivators at the internal elixir realm when he entered the illuminating soul realm? However, since Zen had been so proud, the disciples of Elite House were displeased and would not praise Zen. So, they glared at Zen, with killing intents in their eyes. It seemed as though they wanted to vaporize Zen on the spot. At the same time, they also noticed something strange. He had an innocent and honest expression on his face even though his words were haughty. All the unskilled elites are here. Have you been waiting for me for a long time? After saying this, Zen's face turned black again. Then he quietly cursed Tia a million times. Chapter 402, The Fist. Zen's words ensued an uproar from the martial artists present. They instantly exploded in irritated shouts like a busted warehouse full of gunpowder. Jerk. He is really as arrogant as he is said to be. I'm afraid he has forgotten who he is. Go ahead, let's tear this guy to pieces. Yeah, let's finish him off. More shouting had ensued as the disciples clamored for Zen's destruction. If looks could kill, he would be dead by now. Even Fred wasn't pleased with Zen's words. His eyes scanned Zen up and down in an attempt to see through him. He felt something strange when he first met Zen, but he couldn't put it into words. Morphin's strength was powerful enough to manipulate puppets as he wished since he reached the fusion realm. He could almost do anything he wanted. Even if Fred was at the consummation of the illuminating soul realm, he could only smell out a rat in a suspicious situation but not know everything about it. Footsteps echoed as Zen strode forward. He suddenly felt the energy threads being drawn out of his body for a moment, then he regained control again. However, at that moment, he'd rather not have it. It meant that he had to face the group of elite disciples by himself. They were so livid that they wanted to finish him off now. Zen, I challenge you to a duel, a disciple said. He was at the 6th grade of the illuminating soul realm. He stepped forward and faced Zen. A light smile crossed Zen's lips as he tried to calm himself. He shook his head. I will accept your challenge, but I want to make a rule, he said. Haha, that's funny. Since you're so insolent, why do you still need a rule? Aren't you an expert in martial arts? Even if we all fight together against you, we're no match for you. I believe you don't really need a rule. Do you? Quiet down, let's hear what he has to say, someone said. With those words, the people calmed down. I only accept 3 challenges each day, and I have the right to choose the challengers, Zen said. He came up with the idea just now. He didn't want to offend the elites of the Cloud Hall, but he knew Tia wouldn't stop until she got the results she wanted. Thus, he had to find a middle ground. If Tia and the elites refused, then he would rather stand there and let them beat him up to death. Are you joking? Didn't you say that you wanted to challenge all the disciples of the elite house? Why did you say you would only pick 3 of us now? One of the disciples was upset. Just let it be. Anyway, is there any weak person in our elite house? Another disciple asked. The elites looked around the area to find their weakest member. We shall just give him the right to make the choice. Let's see how powerful a nature creature could be, another disciple urged. The rest of the disciples swelled in chorus. They thought that it was impossible for Zen to find an opponent he could match with. After the crowd calmed down again, Zen looked around in silence. His eyes finally landed on one disciple. He held out a finger and pointed at the disciple who was at the 4th grade of the illuminating soul realm. All of the elites present were at high levels, and the one he chose might be the weakest. Haha, this guy has cleverly chosen his opponent. He chose Warren. Warren, he picked you. Does he think you're a pushover? Meanwhile, Warren Shangguan's face darkened. He flexed his wrists and did some stretches to warm up. He looked at Zen defiantly and said, Did you pick me because I'm only at the 4th grade of the illuminating soul realm? Did you think I'm a weakling? Zen only grinned at him and nodded. He actually didn't want to rock the boat, so he didn't choose the most powerful one of them. At that moment, he could only blame that wretched Tia. He mentally cursed her, but he couldn't tell the disciples the truth. Well, you've shown that you can choose wisely, but you will regret your decision. Even if I'm only at the 4th grade of illuminating soul realm, I've killed people who are at higher levels than I. You can't turn back once you've taken a dark path, Warren said. A grim smile appeared on his face after he finished his words. "Let's cut the garbage and get down to business," Zen simply said. He was tired of talking nonsense. He had no other choice, so he wanted to end the fight as soon as possible. He thought that Tia wouldn't let him die, and her real intention wasn't hard to guess. She just wanted to train him through a series of intense fights. However, her method was so harsh that it ruined Zen's reputation. The elite disciples of Cloud Hall spared an open space for Zen and Warren. Then, they stood face to face in the middle of the open grounds. Warren's weapon was a pair of metal gloves, which looked quite ordinary. He put them on and then stared at Zen. "What's your weapon?" he asked. "This is enough," Zen said and waved his fist. "Ha ha. He must be mad. Warren has his own fists as his weapon because he's excellent in fist-fighting techniques. Even people with weapons in their hands are no match for him. I can't believe someone dares to fight Warren with only his bare hands." Laughter erupted throughout the open space at Zen's words. Warren also laughed in disbelief and said, "I have to remind you that ever since I started learning martial arts, I have been using my gloves. They call me the Iron Hand, because my fists are very hard. Even if I do not wear gloves, they are comparable to the spiritual weapon." Zen just looked at him disapprovingly and pursed his lips. "So what? My whole body is just a top-grade spiritual weapon," he thought. Of course, he didn't say such offensive words in public. He simply nodded and said, "I see, thanks for the heads up." After Zen spoke, he still didn't draw out his sword. Angry as Warren was, he didn't bother to argue with him. He just wanted to send the guy to perdition as quickly as he could. Warren Shangguan raised his fist, lowered his body, then charged like a dragon towards Zen. "By the way, once I've initiated a combat, I can't stop until the fight is over. So even if you're very weak, I won't pull my punches," he said with a wicked smirk. Upon finishing his words, he struck a vicious punch surrounded by bronze life vitality towards Zen. "Take him down, Warren. Warren, show him your swelling fist. Knock him out." It seems that Zen's body is just as fragile as glass to Warren. It wouldn't be a problem for him to kill Zen in just one shot. The spectators chattered ceaselessly among themselves while Zen remained calm as ever. Ever since he knew about Eddie's real power and status, he kept telling himself that he must put in more effort if he wanted to improve his martial arts skills and save his sister. He must practice even 1,000 times harder than the others. Although Tia had a violent training approach, it was for his own good. She hoped that the variety of intense fights would harness his potential, so he could become stronger. The opponents he would face in the future weren't just at the 4th grade of the Illuminating Soul Realm, but at the ultimate level of the Illuminating Soul Realm or Internal Elixir Realm. Maybe some of them would even be at other higher realms. Thus, he practiced his cultivation day and night. Just a few days ago, dozens of dragon scales within him had woken up because he had absorbed some of the heavenly essence into his brain. Thus, the cyan dragon's scales gave him more strength and power. However, he didn't wake too many dragon scales up. Each scale already had immense power on their own. Although Zen's body was like a spiritual weapon, it could only contain a limited amount of power. If he awakened too many dragon scales, his body wouldn't be able to handle it and he would probably die. With his current power and superior flesh body, it wasn't impossible for him to fight Warren with only his bare hands. Swelling fist, Warren roared. He finally used the much-awaited fist-fighting technique. His fist burst with a golden light as it instantly powered up. "Come on, blow him up to pieces. Punch his head off. Beat him to ribbons. Let's see if he still dares to be so arrogant in the future." Warren felt his morale getting boosted up by the crowd when suddenly, Zen's 200 dragon scales lit up and flashed a bright light. All his muscles immediately swelled up, which made him look stronger than ever. They bulked up so much that his veins popped out under his skin, and his body looked like it was about to burst. At the same time, he quickly released the energy of the Phoenix Crystal from his right arm. Therefore, his blow had the maximum impact in both speed and strength. Heavenly Ogre Fist, Zen roared as he shot out his fist. Bang! The fight between the two men now became a match of strength. Martial arts movements became irrelevant now, as what mattered more were strength, speed, and the capacity to bear blows. Warren and Zen hit each other's bodies at the same time. However, when their punches had landed, Warren looked fearful, while Zen just smirked. Although Warren was called Iron Hand and his fist was on par with a spiritual weapon, it was still just a fist and his flesh body was only a bit stronger than the other cultivators. However, Zen was different. His whole body was a top-grade spiritual weapon, and he had 3 spiritual textures on his chest. Just one more advancement, and his body would become a fairy weapon. How could Warren compare to him? When Warren's fist landed on Zen, he only backed a few steps because of the punch's impact. He then felt a gush of warmth that coursed throughout his body and flooded his belly. It brought him a lot of comforts. On the other hand, Zen's fist powered by 200 dragon scales had thrown Warren away. Warren's massive body hit several elite disciples before it finally hit the wall. He had lost consciousness and lay in a heap in one corner. A wave of silence suddenly filled the whole hall, as if there were not a single soul in it. Chapter 403, The Divine Texture. If Zen had defeated Warren with some other skill, the disciples wouldn't have been so shocked. Although Warren was powerful, his competence was only a little higher than Frank's, who had just reached the illuminating soul realm. Since Zen had defeated Frank, he was likely to win in the battle against Warren as well. However, to everyone's surprise, he beat Warren with his bare fists. Warren's fist techniques were renowned in Elite House. Anyone who knew of Warren's abilities would drop his jaw in shock at the news of his defeat. Generally, martial arts practitioners preferred to use weapons to enhance their attacking power, and very few liked to fight with their bare hands. Many cultivators also learned fist fighting techniques to minimize their weaknesses and to supplement their strengths. However, Warren considered his fists to be his most powerful weapon. He had cultivated to such an extent that he had complete confidence in his fist fighting techniques. Ever since he became popular, his competence was obvious to all. So no one dared to underestimate the power of Warren's fists. Since Zen was a swordsman, his greatest skill should have been his swordsmanship. No one expected his fists to be so strong and powerful. That was what confused the disciples. This was like a proud and competent archer defeating a swordsman with a sword instead of a bow and arrow. Such a significant difference would be a devastating blow to his opponent's self-confidence. And it seemed as though Zen was quite good at it. Rocher stood in a corner with his sword resting on his back. He smiled lightly because he knew why the Cloud Hall elites were so shocked. Zen seemed to be versatile and had no apparent weakness. He was particularly outstanding in terms of physical strength, body firmness, and swordsmanship, which he cultivated by following simple principles. Anyone who had any of these advantages would be able to defeat many powerful martial arts practitioners. Fred Lee raised his brows in surprise. As one of the most powerful illuminating soul realm cultivators, his thoughts differed from the others. It was normal for Warren to strengthen his body, and improve his strength and fist-fighting techniques with life vitality. However, instead of strengthening his body with life vitality, Zen had only injected his life vitality into his fists. Only a body refiner could do this. People would refine their bodies before reaching the nature level. After reaching the nature level, the air flow in a cultivator's body would be routed through their navel, so they could begin to practice life vitality-related cultivation methods. Compared to body refining, life vitality cultivation was more powerful. However, that didn't mean it was hard for a cultivator to reach a high cultivation level by refining his body. And, so a small group of people chose body refining. The problem was, compared to demons and ogres who were born strong, people had no advantage after body refining. What Fred found most puzzling was that he didn't sense the unique, forceful energy of body refiners emitting from Zen. The forceful energy was quite similar to life vitality. However, it couldn't be transformed into specific shapes by meditating. If Zen were a body refiner, it would be impossible for him to have no forceful energy. Without an extremely strong body, Zen wouldn't have been able to defeat Warren. That was why Fred was astonished. He had attended the competition today to watch Zen. Fred knew that Zen wouldn't answer his questions, and this was the only way to observe Zen's abilities. For him, Zen was anything but ordinary. Zen stood in the middle of the hall and stretched. As he looked around at the surrounding disciples, he asked with a slight smile, "Is there anyone else who wants to challenge me?" After a short moment of silence, a disciple stepped out from the crowd and said, "I will. I don't believe that you are powerful enough to defeat Warren. I'm sure that Warren wouldn't have lost the battle had he been careful enough. Gary, kill that guy." Seeing that the disciples were so eager to fight him, Zen felt a headache coming on. He just wanted to frighten them so that they wouldn't dare to challenge him, and that was why he had used the most powerful blow in the fight with Warren. Unfortunately, it seemed his approach didn't work. The disciples of Elite House had been chosen from tens of thousands of disciples. This was quite different from how disciples were selected in the Eastern region. Before coming to Cloud Hall for cultivation, disciples had already proven their abilities. So they were quite proud of themselves and wouldn't accept Zen's criticism easily. "Young man, you should pick me. I promise I won't break your hands and feet." Just then, another two sturdy men stepped forward. Their bodies were so huge that they almost blocked Zen's vision. Both these men had reached the 6th grade of the illuminating soul realm. Zen knew that Tia was forcing him to explore his potential in this way. Zen was smart enough not to select an extremely powerful opponent. With a slight smile, he cast his eyes on a skinny, but energetic young man. This young man was at the 4th grade of the illuminating soul realm too. "Albert, that guy picked you. Don't let us down," someone said before giving the young man named Albert a push. Albert Yu was a little surprised that Zen picked him because he had only planned to watch the competitions. He hadn't intended to challenge anybody. Furthermore, he was still in shock after Zen's victory over Warren. As he had no confidence, Albert waved his hands and asked, "Can you pick anybody else? I'm here not for the competition. I'm just here for fun." Zen nodded. Since the young man didn't want to fight him, Zen wouldn't force him. However, the other disciples of Elite House didn't agree. They shouted, "Albert, you have reached the highest level of wind swordsmanship, haven't you? Then why are you so scared? If you beat that guy, I'll give you 5 high-class life vitality crystals. Albert, if you don't accept the challenge, I'll break your legs. Albert, he is just a nature creature. Why are you so scared? Your family will be ashamed of you. If you don't fight him, I will tell your dad." Under pressure from the other disciples, Albert seemed to have no choice. He was born in a 2nd-grade clan, which was as powerful as Cloud Sect. So it would be embarrassing for his clan if Albert dared not fight with a nature creature. Albert frowned as he looked at Zen. Then he shrugged in defeat as he had no choice. Finally, he unsheathed his sword and walked toward Zen. Since Albert had just learned successful sword intent, he was no match for Zen. Besides, as he was reluctant to fight, Albert kept on defending instead of attacking during the battle. And so, after 20 moves, Zen defeated Albert. Zen's victory set off an uproar in the building. More than 10 Elite House disciples stepped forward to challenge Zen. Those who considered them unsuitable to face Zen, cowered in corners as they were afraid Zen would select them next. Finally, Zen pointed at another disciple who seemed to be trembling in the corner. As before, Zen trounced his new opponent. Then he said with a smile, "Let's call it a day. Return early tomorrow morning, and we'll continue with the challenges." With that, Zen turned and prepared to leave. However, these disciples wouldn't let go of him. "You want to leave? Dream on. I won't let you go unless you fight me. Stop him. This guy has been playing tricks all along. He only battled with disciples whose competence was lower than his. How could we let go of him? Zen, you have to confront me before leaving." These disciples rushed toward Zen and were about to fight. Like a stroke of wind, Zen floated through the gap between the crowd, and then he flew higher and escaped the gray building. Fred was shocked when he saw Zen floating away at an incredible speed. Although he had reached the pinnacle of the illuminating soul realm, he had no confidence to catch Zen. "This guy." Fred smiled bitterly and shook his head. He thought Zen had performed well as he dared to challenge the disciples of the Elite House and showed great competence in the competitions. However, when he saw Zen flying at shocking speed, Fred knew that he had underestimated him. However, Fred didn't know that Zen was under the control of Saint Morphins, like a puppet. Saint Morphins was so powerful that a cultivator at Internal Elixir Realm was no match for the puppets he controlled. Since Fred was only at the Illuminating Soul Realm, of course, he couldn't defeat these puppets either. Dang it, I didn't expect him to fly. What the heck? I have never seen a nature creature fly before, and in such a way and at such speed. It doesn't matter as he will come again. Let's discuss how to deal with him. Zen was going to challenge all the disciples of Elite House. He had been following the practice of selecting 3 opponents each time. If he picked the relatively weaker disciples each time, the disciples could take no action. After Zen had left, someone proposed a solution. If the weaker disciples didn't show up the next time, then Zen would have to choose more powerful disciples to fight. These disciples racked their brains as they tried to figure out how best to teach Zen a good lesson so that he wouldn't be so arrogant. Zen knew that he had offended the Elite House disciples. However, since that was what Tia wanted, he had no other choice. Every martial arts cultivator knew that they had to improve through battles. Many of them were often killed by their opponents. However, Zen could challenge anyone he wanted and leave the battle ring at a critical moment. Not everybody was as lucky as Zen. In the evening, after cultivating for a while, Zen opened the red and blue treasure boxes, one by one. The soul essence in the red treasure chests could strengthen Zen's soul, and the blood vigor in the blue treasure chest could benefit his energy and blood. Both the soul essence and the blood vigor were precious to cultivators. Zen knew that the elite house disciples would find a way to deal with him and suppress his arrogance. He intended to improve as quickly as possible. After devouring all soul essences in the red treasure boxes, Zen felt that his soul strength had increased by 30%. When he closed his eyes, Zen could feel a constant sense of comfort coming from his soul. After a while, he opened his eyes and said to the cyan dragon, "You promised to teach me how to make the rune. Do you think my soul is strong enough to learn it?" After a short moment, the cyan dragon's lazy voice could be heard from the depth of Zen's mind. "First, I must correct you. Although they sound like the same thing, we are not talking about making runes. We call it divine texture." Chapter 404, Scorn. Humans on Earth had a deep understanding and knowledge about runes, which gave them more information on how they were able to utilize the runes. Runes were not only there as characters, nor alphabets, they were even more important than the weapons that protected warriors' lives. The runes were widely used in many areas. As such, the Cloud sect's cultivation places were established with magical arrays that were made of runes and other materials. Many weapons were seen inscribed with runes on their blades. These weapons were revered. Not only were these weapons used for protection, but rather they were enforced with great power. When it came to guarding, there were different kinds of sect protecting arrays which were closely related to runes. For pill refiners and weapon refiners, they used fire runes to strengthen the flames' power. All beings should be thankful for the runic experts who gave their time and effort into studying those materials. If it weren't for them, the powers and wonders of the runes would not be harnessed. The cyan dragon's divine texture was otherworldly, a heritage from another broader world. Its conception was far beyond the common runes people knew. And its creation, design, and power were so intricately well thought of that the runes in the central region were no match for it. The divine texture's powers were among the cream of the crop, exceptional. The divine texture. "So, can I start practicing the divine texture now?" Zen asked nervously while containing his happiness. "Yes, you may. But even if you take the soul essences, you might not be able to handle it since yours is still not very strong. Moreover, if you must start to learn the divine texture at this very moment, mind that you will only be able to master the lowest grade. Are you sure you want to learn it now?" Zen replied, light glinting in his eyes. "Rome was not built in one day. And the longest journey begins with the first step. If I don't take the first step, when will I ever start?" "Yes, you're right. Drawing the divine texture would consume a lot of your spiritual power. But at the same time, it is a good way to temper your spirit. This is the right time for you to learn it." The cyan dragon continued. Slowly and firmly, he said, "But the first step of creating the divine texture is to infuse your spiritual power to the tip of the paintbrush." "The tip of the paintbrush? What paintbrush?" Zen asked with confusion. "Of course it is the paintbrush that is used to draw the divine texture. But it seems that you don't have all the materials needed to draw it. If you really want to learn the technique, you must first gather all the materials," the cyan dragon said lightly. "I think it won't be difficult for you to infuse your spiritual power to the tip of the paintbrush. After all, you have already practiced spiritual thorn and have already comprehended the process of turning a soul into a thorn. Gather and prepare the materials tomorrow, then I will teach you to draw the first divine texture stroke. After that, I'll assess whether you have the talent to master the skill." Then a list of materials appeared in Zen's mind. Zen felt giddy seeing the cyan dragon's list of materials. Runic experts or weapon refiners didn't become masters in one day. No one became experts in a day. It was all about patience, practice, and heart. It was just like the case when Zen wanted to refine weapons with the heavenly essence. The real technique of weapon refining could not be grasped by relying only on the guidance book of the weapon refining master Chase. Even if there was a famous teacher who could demonstrate each step and give guidance, it would still be extremely difficult for him to go anywhere by relying on his own understanding of the skill. And that was why some Cloud sect disciples from the noble clans and the Cloud Hall disciples from the influential families despised someone like Zen, who was from the grassroots. People from the noble clans were people born with silver spoons in their mouths. But Zen was different. He had to double up his efforts into achieving his goals, for he didn't have much. The noble clans had the resources to get anything that they had wanted. If they had wanted to learn anything, their family could have easily hired a famous teacher and their performance couldn't be as bad under the guidance of a successful master. That was also why it was difficult for the disciples from the grassroots to stand out, as 99% of these disciples were already left behind when they were born. Doors were opened for a chance at mastering multiple skills. Now that Zen had finally found the legendary teacher, the Cyan Dragon, nothing could stop him from achieving greatness. The sun shone brightly on Zen's face. He got up, yawned and stretched. He was about to go to the dining table for breakfast when suddenly, he felt his body trembling uncontrollably. Saint Morphins was controlling him. He wasn't able to do anything but be the victim. He struggled with it, fighting the Morphins controlling his body when suddenly, his body flew out of the room and zoomed towards the gray building. To Zen, fighting 3 battles a day was a big burden. He had to stand out among the disciples, proving to himself and to others that core family couldn't make him less of a warrior. Yesterday, only about 100 disciples were there in the gray building. But today, when Zen entered the hall, he was surprised by what he saw. There weren't 100 people. The people doubled. Zen could not believe his eyes. So many people were in the hall that a warrior could not pass without having to break the sea of people. He wasn't sure how many disciples were usually there in the building, but he was sure that it wasn't this many. As the name suggested, only the elites were allowed to enter the elite house. Warriors had to go through numerous and difficult tests to be ever considered worthy of entering the elite house. Even the warriors of the Cloud School, which was affiliated to the Cloud Hall, and the warriors of the other 5 great sects, had to undergo the series of tests. Was this a regular scene? Zen was baffled. He never thought of meeting this many more people than ever before. More than that, he was surprised at the sight of some internal elixir realm masters in the hall. Zen raised an eyebrow. He had unintentionally poured scorn on them. But it was not his doing. He was controlled by Tia. Did they have to make such a fuss? Those internal elixir realm masters were not the members of the elite house, Zen supposed. In all honesty, those internal elixir realm masters were not from the elite house. Zen thought of a reason for their presence: his manners. Stories of Zen's unruly manners for the past 2 days had spread around the Cloud Hall. All the disciples of the elite house knew that there was a new member who was extremely arrogant. And that new disciple was only a nature creature. The news was not only known to the disciples of the elite house. The news spread even to other members and masters. It was not surprising that even some of the elders of the Cloud Hall knew about this obnoxious nature creature. And Fernandez was one of elders that was stirred by this news. When Zen was on the Cloud Road, Fernandez had shown special care for Zen. Within his ability, he would like to speak for Zen, vouch for him to get him out of any trouble. Fernandez saw Zen's potential. He saw that Zen would become an extraordinary disciple in the Cloud Hall in the future. He got great talent, and it was only a matter of time for him to achieve success. Fernandez believed in him. But Fernandez didn't expect that Zen could ever behave that way. He was surprised to hear that Zen, a new member of the elite house, just sent out a challenge to everyone in the hall. What an ambitious warrior. It was all too soon. Driven by curiosity, Fernandez decided to go to see the scene himself. He was an elder, and it was not appropriate for him to make an appearance in the gray building. Eager to see what was happening, he made himself invisible. As soon as Zen reached the gray building, Fernandez uttered a surprising sound. With his level, he was able to notice the glimmers of light that surrounded Zen. What happened? Zen is being manipulated. Fernandez was confused. His eyebrows moved closer together. Just like using a thread to control a puppet, the puppet master was able to deprive anyone of the control of their own bodies. The most famous puppet master of them all in the Cloud Hall was Saint Morphins. Aged as Fernandez was, he was a highly esteemed elder, a wise man indeed. Fernandez soon pieced every clue together, solving the mystery of how Zen could act so differently. And he just figured out what might be the case. "I got it," Fernandez exclaimed. Fernandez had known Zen for so long and he knew Zen would never act like that. Even if Zen had every right to boast about his strength and skills, he would not still do it. Fernandez believed that Zen knew better. He wouldn't be so bored to do such a stupid thing. If it was not Zen's doing, then the commotion must have had something to do with the leader of Cloud Hall. Fernandez was able to see through the facade. He knew what was behind all this. The disciples of the elite house had no clue that it was a trick. They were really infuriated by Zen's arrogant manner these 2 days. Warriors in the hall looked like they were about to burn a witch. Their hands were clenched, jaws set, and knuckles popped. They were all ready to give Zen the lesson he would remember for the rest of his life. They were ready to beat him up into a pulp. The fight commenced. Punches were thrown. 1, 2, 3 punches were dodged by Zen. Fists were flying across the hall. But to everyone's dismay, Zen had defeated 3 elite house disciples. All 3 were at the 5th grade of Illuminating Soul Realm. Zen did not know what to make of the situation. He fled and left the angry disciples behind. Zen still chose the weak opponents. He knew what he was capable of and thought that it would have been a huge mistake to choose disciples at the 7th or 8th grade of the Illuminating Soul Realm. After all, he was allowed to choose his opponents since the elite house disciples had no other way to deal with him. After competing in the fight, Zen was tired, his muscles ached, his body weakened. But this did not stop him. He was focused on the mastery of the divine texture. He rushed to the market of Cloud Hall, limping a bit. He could not believe himself that the exhaustion brought by the fight made him almost forget about the materials he must get for the Cyan Dragon. As a community, the disciples of the Cloud Hall created a market that provided convenience for the disciples. They traded, sold, and bought from the stores. The biggest business alliance in the central region, the World Commercial Alliance, also had a store in the market. The market was at the edge of the Cloud Hall. Walking towards the end of the street, Zen saw the vast sea of clouds. They were a live reminder of what beauty was. It was so unreal, he could not see the ground because he was literally tens of thousands of feet high in the air. The smell of forged metal filled the air. Books written by masters lay on the ground. The noise of traders bargaining, the hustle and bustle of the busy market street flooded the atmosphere. Zen flipped through the stalls as if they were book pages in search for the store which could give him the materials he needed. He came across this store. He looked for a signage, but he found none. He looked up, down, sideways, nothing could determine which store he was in. He walked a little bit to the left and he saw this big board, with something written on it. But the text was so small that all he made out of it was that they were small characters carved in ancient calligraphy. He squinted his eyes to see what they read: World Commercial Alliance. The World Commercial Alliance was not foreign to the disciples at all. It was well known in their area. In fact, the organization had a strong background. Rumors circled in that although the World Commercial Alliance didn't belong to any sect, when it came to the strength and influence, it was even more powerful than the Cloud Hall. It was almost a 5th grade organization. Not too much of an intimidation to the customers, but also not the weakest. The World Commercial Alliance played a neutral ground. It never got involved in any sect fight, never got too political. Zen walked into the store, his eyes wandered and saw all kinds of materials showcased on the shelf. Zen's eyes widened as there were a wide variety of strange materials. He saw something like Stapelia variegata lin, wood thunderlight stone, and even a block of rotten cloud basswood that lasted for over 30,000 years. The rare, the strange, the beautiful, this store had it all. The mastery of runes required a deep learning and understanding. It was a heavy and important topic to learn because the art of runes contained and covered everything. Thanks to the studies of the ancient men from tens of thousands of years ago, warriors could harness the potential that the runes gave them. They created the technique through hard study and experiment and refined it along the way. And it became what it was today, a powerful and magic martial arts technique. In the store, an old man was sitting behind the counter. The man lowered his head, with a round glass in his hand. Looking intently on the material on his other hand, he seemed to be examining the small and closely written characters on a jade pendant. The jade was very special, perhaps because it was, after all, a rare and ancient jade. The characters on it were very strange, an unknown language to Zen. "Boss," Zen called out after he entered the store. The old man was startled as he had been too focused on the thing he was doing. He raised his head and saw Zen. When he found that the customer was only a nature creature, he seemed confused. The people who came to this market were mostly at the level of Illuminating Soul Realm or above. As he knew, it was rare for a nature creature to enter the Cloud Hall. Even if anyone in the Cloudy City wanted to go to the market, they at least should have the ability to fly up here. But only Illuminating Soul Realm cultivators were able to do that. "What's up?" the old man asked in an angry tone. It was irritating to be disturbed, and worse, Zen was only a nature creature, and that didn't deserve any respect. "I want to buy some materials, and a paintbrush to draw the runes," Zen said while looking around, avoiding the old man's eyes. "Materials and paintbrush? You want to make runes? You?" the old man asked, let out a little laugh, a glint of mockery in his eyes. Chapter 405, 30% discount. It wasn't really because the old man looked down upon Zen. Only that judging from his eyes and expressions, his behavior seemed too weird. The old man had been selling raw materials his entire life. He was considered one of the most famous figures in the World Commercial Alliance, Cloudy City branch. He was familiar with the magic array experts and runic experts of Cloudy City. The most famous weapon refiners and alchemists were his acquaintances. He was even friends with some magic array experts of Cloud Hall, as a result of which he also had a knowledge of runes. Magic arrays were composed of runes and it wasn't an easy thing to learn to draw the runes. Usually, young apprentices who wanted to learn to draw runes were required to have a mentor, who taught them the art in person. In a way, the mentors prepared them with all kinds of tools right in the beginning. It was strange for new apprentices to buy the tools by themselves. After the purchase and some practices, as soon as they accumulated certain experience and knowledge, they required better rune pens. It wasn't difficult to guess Zen was a brand new freshman. Learning runes seemed just like a passing fancy for this young man. With his little knowledge of runes, he might have thought drawing runes was simply just to draw some brushes with a pen. Some young men thought impulsively and wanted to learn new skills immediately in the spur of the moment. In reality, only a few could manage to acquire the skills successfully. The old man had seen many such agog freshmen. As far as he knew, if they didn't bear with the training, the materials they bought from him would simply go to waste. This was precisely the reason why he didn't want to entertain Zen's requirements. But Zen ignored his attitude and spoke seriously, nodding his head. Yes, I want to learn runes. I want to try some simple ones first. Here is the list of materials, and could you please help me prepare them? He handed out the list to the old man. Everything on the list was based on the Cyan Dragon's request. According to the Cyan Dragon, these materials were only to draw the basic divine textures. However, even the lowest level of divine texture seemed to require abnormally expensive materials. Even though he wasn't particularly aware of the price of the materials, he knew that these materials must cost a lot. Casually skimming through Zen's list, the old man's expression changed drastically. Angrily, he said, "These are the materials you want to use to practice drawing runes. Are you kidding me? Get out, leave, right away, and don't waste my time." He got up from his chair, almost pushing Zen out of the room. Zen was shocked. What kind of behavior was this? The old man's sudden outburst pissed him off and he continued to stand firmly. "It is not reasonable for you to reject a customer's request. You sell the materials and I pay you, that's how it works. Why are you chasing me out?" The old man scowled with eyes glaring at Zen. Impatiently, he responded, "The materials you are asking for are used to make 4-star runes. They aren't used by ordinary runic experts. Didn't you say you needed them for simple ones? How do you plan to use such high-level materials to draw simple runes? Just because you are a customer you think you can cheat me?" Zen was dumbfounded. Right at that moment, he heard the Cyan Dragon's voice in his mind. "Oh, really? Well, my divine texture is comparatively higher than your world's runes. It seems like the requirement of 4-star runes here is the same as that of our 1-star, basic level texture." In a nutshell, in Zen's world, if the runes came from the experiences summarized by the generations of runic experts for thousands of years, the divine texture was the accumulation of the upper world's billion years of practice. The two things were totally different in terms of conception, the way of inheriting and the effects. It was like a kid who just learned to speak trying to understand the profound knowledge of a scholar. Despite the lag between the runes here and the divine texture, Zen felt speechless at the old man's refusal. How were the higher-level materials different? What would happen if he used these materials for basic practice? He was ready to take the risk and made up his mind at last. "I would like to buy these materials," he said, "and this is no trickery. I will pay you the full amount. I don't understand why you would refuse the trade in front of your eyes. You sell, and I pay. That is all that should matter to you. Shut up, boy, I don't want to sell you these materials. Even if you pay double the amount, I won't sell them. I don't want my materials to be wasted by irresponsible, young men like you." This old man truly had dignity. Any other man in his place would only care about the benefits, apart from trying to maintain a good personal relationship with his customers. It was rare for a seller to push his customers away due to his own self-righteousness. He sat back in his chair, determining not to sell anything to Zen. Ignoring his presence, he resumed investigating the ancient jade as he was before Zen had appeared with his illogical demands. Zen was in a dilemma. He did not know how to deal with him. His shop was the biggest in the market. Disappointed, he decided to step out and take his chances somewhere else. Right then, the Cyan Dragon's voice spoke in his head again, "Don't leave, Zen. I have a solution to convince him to sell you the materials." "Really? What do you propose?" Zen asked with eyes wide open. "Do you see the ancient jade in his hand? It is a piece of phoenix ancient jade. The texts recorded above are in ancient phoenix words. This old man has no way of understanding and decoding the words written on it. If you tell him the meaning of these words, maybe he will sell the materials to you," the Cyan Dragon explained. That is a fair point, but I do not know the meaning of those words either." Zen rolled his eyes despondently. The Cyan Dragon replied, sensing Zen's impatience. He explained further, "I know you can't read the ancient phoenix language, Zen, but I can." The longevity of the dragon was beyond Zen's imagination. Not only did he know the ancient phoenix language, which itself was rare, there were only a few languages he didn't know. Zen was pleased and impressed at once. He knew he had to adopt some strategies to get his way. He walked back to the counter, but the old guy didn't want to talk to him at all now. Zen had no choice but to cry out the words that the dragon fed him. Use the fire generated from the stars as a sacrifice in the Lotus Lake, praying for prosperity in the next life. The old man was deeply absorbed in studying the words inscribed on the ancient jade. It didn't matter to him whether Zen was there or not. These ancient jades in his hand held high historic and collection value and were very hard to be evaluated. With that, the texts on the jade only added to its preciousness and original value. It was said that the ancient jade of the Phoenix clan had been passed down from the ancient Phoenix nationality. If people could decipher the characters, it would benefit the refinement greatly. However, it was extremely difficult to decipher these words. This old man had been trying to study the words for more than 1.5 years. He had even compared them to some ancient books in his collection, and yet had only been able to understand a few words. When Zed walked to him again, he got very irritated upon being disturbed and immediately frowned at him. He had just opened his mouth to scold him when he was cut off by Zen. His expression changed from annoyed to bewildered the moment he heard Zen reciting the words that matched with the words he had decoded already. He was tongue-tied, flabbergasted, and shocked. His mouth fell open in surprise as he stared Zen's moving mouth. Gaining his senses, he got up and started to listen intently. But at the same time, Zen stopped and shut his mouth, giving a gentle smile to the old man. Steadily and silently, he kept smiling at the old man. "This," the old man said as he reached for the jade, lifting it to Zen's eye level. "Can you, young man, will you translate the remaining for me?" he asked with purity in his eyes. He truly was an honest man, who respected his materials, his trade, and his study. According to Zen's translation, the old man understood that these words did not speak of any opportunities. This jade seemed to be buried with an inscription about the memory of a dead person. Even though he had already been certain of this, he still wanted to know the meaning given that he had invested so much time studying it. Knowing the meaning would only add to his dedication. The translation would also increase the price manifold, if he were to sell it. Noticing the old man's piqued interest, Zen smiled and started to walk toward the exit jokingly. The man who was trying to drive him away just 2 minutes ago, now ran eagerly to make him stay. Zen had only translated the text partially. How could he let him leave? "Young man, listen to me," he shouted behind him. "Don't be so impatient. Come and sit down. Let's talk some more, shall we?" He clutched his sleeve and pulled at it. When the owners of the surrounding shops noticed this, they were surprised. They found this utterly strange. They had been doing business in this city beside him for many years and were all very familiar with his unreliable temper. He prided himself because of his reputation in the World Commercial Alliance. Some people even liked to say he dealt with people as if his eyes were located at the top of his head. They had never seen him being so kind and desperate with anyone. How could he forget his pride and plead to a young man, a mere freshman? Zen kept trying to leave, even though that wasn't his intention. The materials on the list that the Cyan Dragon had provided could also be purchased in Cloudy City. But if he could buy everything in the Cloud Hall shopping area, why bother? He simply wanted the old man to ask him a few more times to come back. The old man courteously brought a cane chair for Zen to sit on, then handed him a cup of warm, fragrant tea. Seeing that Zen had become less reluctant to stay, he said, "Young man, I was wrong. Would you please translate the second half of the jade text for me?" It was as if someone had solved a riddle he had been trying to solve all this time. Now, Zen had come and told him the solution, but only half of it. How could that not instill a desperate sense of curiosity in him? Half knowledge would only make him sad. He needed to know the rest to attain balance and peace of mind, or his heart would never stop jumping up and down. Part of him wished Zen hadn't told him anything at all. At least, that way, he wouldn't have been on edge like this. Unlike the old man, Zen was much more composed. He picked up his teacup and sipped from it slowly, pausing before he put forth his cards. "Yes, I do not mind telling you the rest at all, but on one condition," he said. "What is it?" the old man asked immediately. "I want to buy all the materials that are in the list, and I want a 30% discount," Zen said firmly, smiling innocently. The old man fell silent, a trace of hesitation appearing on his face. The materials Zen was asking for were not cheap. The old man was only a steward in the World Commercial Alliance and didn't have the authority to do a bargain like that. If he provided the discount, it would be at a personal loss. But his wish to know the meaning of the text meant much more than the loss. He thought of all the pros and cons and finally made up his mind. Gritting his teeth, he looked at Zen with a convulsed expression and said, "Okay, that's a deal." He had done a quick calculation in his mind, concluding that he would pay for the loss entailed from his own pocket. Anyway, the sales price after the discount was only slightly lower than the cost. He wouldn't have to pay a lot to make up for it. Besides, he was convinced that it was worth knowing the meaning of the text. Chapter 406, Preparations for Drawing Divine Textures. Zen didn't expect that this matter was impeccably solved because the Cyan Dragon helped to interpret that particular ancient phoenix text. Not only did the old man completely change his attitude towards him, but he also promised to sell the materials at a discounted price of about 30%. Because the old man showed him genuine sincerity, he had no qualms interpreting the second half of the text on the jade. The old man listened with great attention, apparently intending to memorize every word of it. When he had finished translating, the old man's weary eyes lit up. And he asked respectfully, "Young man, where did you learn the ancient phoenix language?" As far as he knew, there was once ancient phoenixes existing in this world, but this species had already died out long ago. Sadly, their descendants were nowhere to be found. Zen definitely deprived him of the truth. "Sorry, I can't tell you," he chuckled. "But if you come across words or texts you don't know, you can ask me to decipher them. I think I should be able to interpret them all." Upon hearing that Zen might need his help, the Cyan Dragon immediately grumbled in Zen's mind, "Hey Zen, cracking this text for you doesn't necessarily mean that I promise to interpret anything else in the future. Besides, I can't possibly know all of them even though I do know a lot of languages." On the other hand, the old man's face changed at what he heard. If the young man had uttered such arrogant words before translating the Phoenix language, the old man would have taken off his shoe and aimed its sole in hitting Zen's face right there and then. How many strange languages were there in the world? And how could anyone possibly know all of them? Some species had left their writing in the world when they had fallen. If this was the case, who could recognize their writing? This young man bragged about himself too much. Considering Zen had effortlessly transcribed the ancient Phoenix language, the old man decided not to contradict him directly. He surmised that there was a possibility that Zen might know some out-of-the-ordinary words or language and he might need his help later on. Although he found Zen's words unfavorable, he still respectfully stated, "Good, good. Are you a disciple of the Cloud Hall? From the look of you, you must be a disciple of the elite house. May I have your name, please? I might require your aid sometime later." Zen let out a smile, and after disclosing his name to the old man, he uttered, "All right, please prepare the materials I need." The old man nodded. Then he called out for his two clerks, who emerged from the store a few moments later, waiting for his instruction. The old man took the list of materials that Zen was offering him. Then he threw it to the two clerks, and ordered, "Go get these materials ready." Then turning to face Zen again, he suggested, "Mr. Luo, if you want to learn to draw runes, you will be needing a special pen. There happen to be some in here. They are not the best, but they are great for practicing drawing." Afterward, he opened a drawer, took out a penholder from it and put it on the table. Several runic pens were arranged meticulously on the penholder. These runic pens varied in style and material. Some were made of jade, some made of animal bones. "I recommend this one for beginners," the old man said, pointing to one of the runic pens. "This runic pen is made of broken jade. When you use it to draw runes, your soul power will be able to seep through the cracks between the pieces to the tip of the pen, so it will be easier to write. Zen felt tempted by the old man's introduction. He thought that it would be easier for him, a beginner, to draw runes with a lighter runic pen. He was about to decide to buy the pen when the cyan dragon resting in his mind voiced out, "Don't choose that one, pick the one next to it." Then Zen's gaze shifted to the next pen. Pointing to the metal runic pen, Zen inquired, "How is this one?" "You have a sharp eye, but I don't recommend this one," the old man stated and shook his head. "It is made of hematite, more than 3 times the weight of an ordinary runic pen. It will not be easy to lift and will be hard for the soul power to penetrate. I really don't recommend it. Only senior runic experts will choose this style." Zen became hesitant because of what the old man said, but then the cyan dragon stated again, "One of the purposes of asking you to draw runes is to toughen your soul. So what's the use of the runic pen made of broken jade? Listen to me, buy this one." The cyan dragon was, after all, his teacher of runes, so Zen had to take his advice and choose this runic pen made of metal. The old man's thought was opposed to Zen's insistence of having the metal runic pen since it was quite heavy to lift. But still, he took the runic pen out and handed it to Zen so as not to offend him. As soon as he took the runic pen from the old man, Zen felt it was indeed heavy. While its weight was nothing to him, it would have a considerable impact on drawing runes. After all, every rune was so precise that if he couldn't hold it steady, a single stroke would ruin the rune. Soon after, the 2 clerks had the materials on the list ready. These materials, though rare, were all used to draw the most basic divine textures. Thus, they were not particularly hard to find. After inspecting the items, Zen asked about the price. "How much are all the materials?" The old man did a little calculation with his finger and replied, 800 mid-grade life vitality crystals. Giving you a 30% discount, it will be 560 mid-grade life vitality crystals. 560 mid-grade crystals. Although it was a cost that Zen could afford, he couldn't help lamenting how expensive the materials were. He already had acquired general information of the currencies in circulation in the central region and their exchange rates with other currencies. Low-grade life vitality crystal was the base currency here, and the rate of exchange with the cubic crystal was basically 1-to-1. And 100 low-grade life vitality crystals were equivalent to 1 mid-grade life vitality crystal. That was to say, the value of 560 mid-grade life vitality crystals was equal to 56,000 cubic crystals. "Can I pay with cubic crystals?" inquired Zen. Before leaving the eastern region, Zen gave part of his heavenly essences to Earth to look after and took out a lot of cubic crystals for his use. Cubic crystals? The old man was a little surprised. He had guessed that Zen might be from an exalted family or even a descendant of one of the elders of Cloud Hall, but Zen's question denied his speculation. As the cubic crystal was the currency of the eastern region, it indicated that Zen was supposed to come from that little place. The currency of the little place could also circulate in the central region, but it tended to trade at a discount to the local currency. "Yes, you can pay with cubic crystals," replied the old man. "But a single cubic crystal can only be exchanged for half a low-grade life vitality crystal." The old man's words made Zen depressed. At the rate of exchange that the old man mentioned, the cubic crystal was even less valuable than he knew, and it would cost him 112,000 cubic crystals to buy these materials. "That's unreasonable," Zen complained bitterly in his heart. Noticing the frown on Zen's face, the old man grinned, "I can't help it. You may ask others about the exchange rate, and you'll know the currency of the eastern region is worthless in the central region." Luckily, Zen was carrying a lot of cubic crystals, and he didn't bargain again. But he thought that if the old man asked him for help again, he would exploit him severely. Reluctantly, he paid the old man 112,000 cubic crystals before he left the market with the purchased materials. The old man, with a complicated look, stared at Zen's back, sighed in his heart, "What a strange young man. And what a waste of materials. 112,000 cubic crystals aren't a small sum of money. The youth of this generation is really unpredictable." Back at his place of residence, Zen began preparing for drawing runes. These materials could not be used directly, but needed to be processed first. Drawing the divine texture was purely technical, and Zen knew nothing about it. But under the guidance of the cyan dragon, his teacher, he handled the materials himself at ease. Potent kudzu roots, for example, needed to be ground into fine powders. Besides, the roots of gelid herb should be cut and kneaded before mixing with another material, which was cloud ash. It took him a long time just to mix the materials. Moreover, any of the procedures could not go wrong, or else he had to throw out the wrong mix and start over. An hour later, Zen was finally finished mixing the materials. Zen then languidly picked up the runic pen and took a deep breath. Although the cyan dragon had taught him out, he was still a little nervous for the first time to draw divine textures. Holding the runic pen up, Zen closed his eyes and meditated. Soon, a pale yellow soul appeared between his eyebrows. However, it was different from the soul when he launched the spiritual thorn. The move of turning a soul into a thorn, in the spiritual thorn, was for the sake of attacking enemies, so the soul must act extremely quick and with profound fierceness. But this time, he was trying to introduce his soul power to the point of the runic pen to draw divine textures. So, the slower his soul went, the better. When Zen's soul filled the runic pen, its point drew the first stroke on the paper. Chapter 407, Perfect Brushwork. The divine texture for meditation was among the first that Zen had learned under the cyan dragon's instruction. It was a kind of meditation rune. This particular rune was usually placed in a practice room or on a furnace. Its energy could reinforce the meditative state of its cultivator. Practice necessitated much concentration. Akin to an artist refining his craft, a cultivator required great reserves of concentration. The meditation rune would be of much use in calming nerves and eliminating distractions. According to the cyan dragon's words, the divine texture for meditation was one of the simplest among the one-star divine textures. Its lines were definite and uncomplicated. However, this feat was very easy only for the cyan dragon himself. At the first stroke of Zen's pen, a dull, gray line marred the smooth surface of the paper. The edges were messy, an insult itself to the brush. It was an obvious failure. Zen had only begun familiarizing himself with the weight of the brush and the consistency of the ink. Beginnings are the hardest part, the cyan dragon said in good-natured jest. Zen shrugged his teasing aside, the ribbing not particularly wounding him. He didn't think that he could succeed on the first try either. There was much work to be done, and he knew perfectly well that it would not be easy. According to the art of painting divine textures that the cyan dragon had taught him, he needed to meld his being with the pen, distinguishing the ingredients in the ink with subtle perception. Only after arranging the materials in their proper order with his spiritual energy would the stroke follow his hand and create a sleek, polished line. Taking a new sheet of paper, he focused in silence for a while before continuing his attempts. He could turn his soul into a thorn and enter the state of forgetting himself, but it appeared that perception was not his strong suit. He was not good at feeling things with his soul. The spiritual thorn required nothing more than a rough shooting at his enemy's direction. It was the first time that Zen had to maintain control of his soul power in such a painstaking and meticulous manner. After collecting his thoughts, Zen raised his hand and touched its tip to the paper. At the contact with the sheet, the tip shone with a cyan light. I made it, Zen thought in excitement, but the cyan light disappeared as soon as it arrived, dying down at the small movement of Zen's hand. Zen took a closer inspection of the stroke. Its first half contained a cyan color, and the rest of the line still in a dull gray hue. I guess this is another failure. The cyan dragon laughed at him again. The sound of the dragon's laughter was starting to tug at Zen's nerves. Turning to the source of the offending sound, Zen said irritated, "Stop your wisecrack now. Why don't you show me and do something useful instead?" The cyan dragon appeared taken aback by the demand. "You want a demonstration of a one-star divine texture?" The dragon asked in disbelief. A one-star divine texture was an insult to his divinity. The cyan dragon's expertise lay on the art of divine textures. He paled to the other 8 dragons on the furnace in measures of strength or martial techniques, but he would not be bested with the brush. Even the grand marvelous array, the shielding array of their race, was arranged by his own hand. And here was this mortal, asking a creature of his rank to paint a one-star texture. The dragon was wide-eyed at the ridiculous request. Nonetheless, he eventually deigned to give a demonstration. He had given his word to teach the boy, and so he should keep it. The cyan dragon didn't have a real body, but he could teach Zen with his spiritual power. He instructed, "Hold your pen higher." After following the dragon's words, a small streak of light burst from Zen's forehead to the pen. The cyan dragon projected a part of his soul into the brush. After it had combined with the brush, the dragon spoke once again, "Try once more now." Zen moved his pen on the paper with a gentle stroke. A beautiful cyan line appeared on the paper. It was nothing short of perfection. The masterful way of handling the ingredients in the ink was evident in the clear, refined line on the sheet. Zen was unable to take his eyes off his handiwork. He sat silently and marveled at the utter perfection of the brushwork. "How do you like it, boy?" The cyan dragon's voice came from Zen's mind. "It's amazing," Zen praised sincerely. "Of course it is. What do you take me for?" The dragon scoffed, then his voice turned serious. "You don't have to push yourself to get everything right immediately." The dragon paused thoughtfully before adding, "Your second attempt was incomplete, but you have actually grasped the technique. Even runic experts cannot achieve that in such a short amount of time. For many, it takes months." Despite laughing at the mortal's earlier failures, the cyan dragon was surprised at how quickly Zen had comprehended the key to the strokes. It had come so naturally to him. Months? That long? Is it so difficult? Zen's shoulders slumped in dejection at first upon seeing the disparity of his skill next to the dragon's, but after learning that he was doing better than most people, his motivation returned. The fact that he seemingly had a natural aptitude for the skill brought his determination back. His lips curled into a confident smile. He changed the sheet once again and held his brush again. Furrowing his brows in concentration, he spoke to himself. "Try to feel the ingredients in the ink with my soul." Focusing his energy, he sifted through the particles of the ink, envisioning the proper strokes. There are 4 ingredients in the ink. The potent kudzu root has the largest quantity, while the gelid herb is the smallest. I need to put the gelid herb particles to the bottom. Only in this way can I make full use of the potent kudzu root. The potent kudzu root is cyan in color, in the same shade of the glinting light of the cyan dragon's work. If this is so, then the most important material of this divine texture must be the potent kudzu root. Zen analyzed in his mind, breaking down the materials into their smallest particles. Now, fixing all his concentration on the tip of the brush, he pressed it against the paper. He could almost feel the contact in his skin. All of a sudden, a strong cyan light, similar to the one he saw earlier, came off from where the brush was in contact with the paper. What? How did he do it? The cyan dragon was shocked at the flawlessness of Zen's brushwork. When he regained his composure, his thoughts were accompanied with complex emotions. "It seems that I have underestimated this boy." At Zen's third attempt, he was able to make full use of the materials in the ink and fulfilled their functions perfectly. This was the so-called perfect brushwork by runic experts. A perfect brushwork of a 1-star texture was a paltry feat for the cyan dragon to achieve. However, it was unimaginable for Zen to be able to do it only at the 3rd attempt. There could only be one possible explanation for this, the cyan dragon thought to himself as he looked at Zen. The boy was born with the gift for painting divine textures. Such genius was impressive even to the cyan dragon's eyes. If other runic experts in Central Region knew about this, they might fall unconscious from shock. The cyan dragon's knowledge and experience enabled him to quickly understand and accept Zen's incredible achievement. But runic experts were a different matter altogether. For them, the perfect brushwork was something of similar nature to a miracle, the perfect blade to a blacksmith. Most runic experts were not able to achieve it in their lifetime. At most, they would arrive at 70 to 80% of the material's functions. One who could achieve 90% would be upon the ranks of a master. But here was Zen, achieving it at his 3rd attempt. What did this mean? It was like a blacksmith creating the perfect blade after a 3rd trial. It was, quite simply, unbelievable. The most important part of painting divine textures was the ability to control the materials in the ink. After Zen's successful attempt, there were no other difficulties for him. The only thing left was for him to pay attention to the intersections of different lines. The structure of a 1-star divine texture was not at all complicated. Zen moved his pen according to the cyan dragon's instructions, and lines started to stretch and cross on the paper. It was not long before Zen finished the last line and connected it with the first line. Gradually, the cyan light in the lines paled until they disappeared, and a complete divine texture of 24 lines appeared on the paper. "It's finished." Zen's face lit up in excitement as he traced the strokes on the paper with his eyes. The cyan dragon fell silent as he watched Zen's first accomplished piece of work, a 1-star divine texture for meditation. With Zen's perfect brushwork, this 1-star texture could be as powerful as an ordinary 2-star texture. After a long while, the cyan dragon opened his mouth. "You did a fine job. A little more, and it will be as if I had made it myself." The cyan dragon praised in half-truth. Now that Zen had achieved the perfect brushwork, the effect of his texture should be the same as the cyan dragon's. But the dragon could not admit this. After all, he had to save face after teasing Zen's failure some moments ago. Besides, Zen had a long way to go. Divine textures of higher ranks required much more materials and had more complicated steps. Accomplishing a 1-star texture was a far cry from the more complex textures. There was a greater control needed for materials. As of the moment, it was something beyond Zen's current skill. How can I use this meditation rune? Zen asked as he picked up the paper with divine texture and observed it carefully. The cyan dragon decided to pause his musings and focus on the matters at hand. Runes are usually used in an array. Since you don't need to arrange an array now, you can activate the rune directly with your life vitality, he answered. The magic array experts in Eastern region were also runic experts. Mac, the disciple of 90-foot Peak who had fought Zen during the All Peaks competition, was one such expert. His runes were painted in his array flag and were activated through his magic array plate. For those magic array experts in Eastern region, they usually employed the use of cubic crystals as energy sources. In the Central region, the life vitality crystals were used instead. Zen nodded after hearing the cyan dragon's words. He put up the paper on a wall and then transferred some life vitality into it. The divine texture shone as Zen's energy flowed through it. Cyan rays broke out from the symbol and Zen immediately felt refreshed at the touch of the warm light. It was the same feeling that one had after waking up from a restful sleep. He felt the tense knots of his muscles relax, and his exhaustion dissipated like the night being forgotten at dawn. This divine texture is very effective. I wonder how much I can sell this for, he thought to himself. At first, Zen had thought himself to be a rich man, but he found out that his 100,000 cubic crystals was not even worthy to be considered a fortune after he came to Central region. He decided to inquire about the price of this divine texture the next day. Chapter 408. Destroy a beginner's confidence. After Zen finished drawing his first meditation divine texture, he did not stop. The reason why he bought so many materials was to practice his skills of drawing divine textures. The materials were enough for him to make 10 divine textures. Zen did not want to waste these materials, so he started to make his next one. Even a runic expert could not keep making runes without any rest, as the strength of his soul was consumed during the process of making runes. When one's soul strength was not enough, one would feel tired and sleepy, and once the exhaustion hit, it would be difficult to concentrate. Having strong soul strength, Zen now could continuously make 8 divine textures. Now he managed to finish the 8th one with great difficulty, and before he could start the next divine texture, he felt uncomfortable all of a sudden. His head felt terrible, as if it was about to explode. He could not focus his attention anymore. Out of sleepiness, he accidentally stroked a bad stroke with his brush pen, and the drawing wasn't perfectly completed. One should be careful when he made runes. With one tiny mistake, the whole rune could be ruined. This is your first time making runes and you cannot consume too much of your soul strength. It will be a big loss if you use up your soul strength and damage your soul, the cyan dragon said. At his words, Zen felt a comfortable freshness in his head. Soon he felt much better. Because the cyan dragon had swallowed the flood dragon spirit and blood, he became more active recently and had more strength to help Zen. When he heard the dragon's warning, Zen's heart was tightened. He realized that it was really a haste for him to practice drawing the divine texture for such a long time. Nothing could be accomplished on the first try. Zen must stop now before it was too late. After that, Zen focused on his cultivation. Besides learning the skills of making the divine texture, he also had to face the disciples of the elite house as usual. It became almost like a mandatory course for Zen. Every morning, Zen's body was controlled by morphins. He had to enter the gray building, where he battled against the disciples from the elite house. In order to defeat the disciples from the elite house, Zen had to use every skill he had learned. At first, Zen could handle this by his powerful body and the strength of the dragon scales inside his body. But as the mornings passed, there would be more and more disciples who would challenge Zen, and many would assess him for his weaknesses. They would be better and better at knowing how to defeat him. Zen felt much more pressured. There was an instance where Zen had to use his unique skill of spiritual thorn, and even once he had to call out his sword spirit, Lily, to help him fight. The disciples of the elite house were also surprised. In their eyes, Zen was so tenacious that it was really a tough thing to defeat him. Each disciple who fought against Zen was stronger than the previous one, but Zen seemed always to have special skills to defeat them. The last one to fight against Zen that day was at grade 6 of the Illuminating Soul Realm. Although this disciple was not the strongest of all the disciples of his level, he was strong enough to defeat Zen, as there was a very large gap between the level 6 of the illuminating soul realm and the level 5, the level of the precious disciple that Zen defeated. However, this disciple at the 6th level was still defeated by Zen in the end. After the 3 fights that day, Zen finished and went away from the building. He wanted to go to the market of the Cloud Hall. He had spent lots of cubic crystals buying the materials for making the divine textures. Now he wanted to know whether or not the divine textures he made could be sold in the market. Zen was unsure, and on his way to the market, he was riddled with uncertainty. After all, the meditation divine texture was just his first practice. He planned to go to the shop of the old man from the World Commercial Alliance. Since he had done a great favor to the old man the day before, he figured that the old man wouldn't turn him away even if his divine textures couldn't be sold. Tia, in the ice palace, felt dissatisfied with Zen. She was looking at Zen through the picture slab with her eyebrows knitted in confusion. Why does he want to learn the skill of making runes? He doesn't cultivate himself for enough time. Why does he waste his time and energy? Tia wondered aloud. Tia did not feel content. The reason why she helped Zen was that she had a plan in her head. But Zen's cultivation was too low now and she could not carry her plan out. That was why she asked Zen to play against the disciples from the elite house. She wanted Zen to improve as much as possible in the shortest possible time. In her eyes, Zen didn't yet have enough time to cultivate himself. And now that she saw Zen was spending a lot of time and energy on drawing the divine texture, she thought that he was wasting his time. In Tia's eyes, runes were too profound for Zen to learn in a short time. Many runic experts and magic array masters could only have great achievements after they spent a lot of time and energy learning it. Zen hadn't learned runes before and now he wanted to learn runes. It was impossible for him to succeed in such a short time, and Tia could not wait that long. Morphins, who was standing near her and heard what she said, laughed. "Lady, it is normal for a youngster to try something new. If he knows how difficult it is to learn runes, he will give it up naturally. Don't worry about it." "No," Tia said, raising her finely plucked eyebrows. "I cannot wait. Zen must enter the illuminating soul realm. I don't think he has time to learn about the skills of making runes. He must stop it now." At her words, Morphins looked at her and internally gave a sigh. She is actually worried about herself. She has reached the last stage of her cultivation method, the Sutra of Empyrean Goddess. She should concentrate on her own cultivation. Even though Zen has good talents, he is too young. But Morphins dared not speak out his thoughts. Everyone knew that Tia, the head of the Cloud Hall, was a person of strong mind and strong character. She did not change her mind easily. When Tia had finished talking, she fired a message rune. "Felix, please come here to my place." Felix. Morphins did not understand. He looked at Tia, a puzzled expression on his face. "Miss, what do you want Felix to do? You will not ask Felix to teach Zen the skills of making runes, will you?" Felix Zong was the best runic expert of the Cloud Hall. The protection array Tia obtained from the Cloud Road was given to him and Felix had been studying it since. How powerful and profound the protection array of a 6th grade sect was. So Felix was very busy now. It would cost countless resources to set up the protection array. However, once they thought about how powerful it was, they also felt excited. If they could build up that protection array, the defense of the Cloud Hall was surely strong enough to bear any hits from all sects in the central region. Because of this, it was worth setting up a protection array even though it would be costly. That was why Felix shut himself in his room and had not gone anywhere else. He kept himself busy with studying the protection array, wanting to set it up as soon as possible. He was in his room, poring over his studies of the protection array when Tia called. In a moment, he flew to the ice palace as quickly as a beam of light. He bowed to Tia. "Miss, what can I do for you?" Tia nodded her head and asked, "Felix, how's your progress with the protection array I gave you?" "Miss, I am estimating what materials the protection array needs. I will give a list of all the materials needed later. But it will take some time to finish," Felix replied. "Okay, I need you to do another thing today," Tia said. Morphins looked at Tia curiously. Is it true that she will ask Felix to teach Zen the skills of making runes? He wondered. Then he heard Tia's words. There is a young disciple who doesn't know how difficult it is to make runes and he wants to learn that skill. I'm asking you to give him a blow. It will be best if you can destroy his confidence in learning the skills of making runes and make him give up. Morphins nearly collapsed to his knees. He could not believe what he was hearing. The head of the Cloud Hall asked Felix to come over just for this. Tia was fussing over such a minor matter. Okay, she is the head of the Cloud Hall. All of us should follow her instructions, Morphans thought, feeling helpless to do anything. Contrary to how Morphans felt about Tia's request, Felix seemed interested. Miss, could I ask who this young disciple is? What star runes can he make? You probably have heard about him. His name is Zen Luo. As for the star of his works, I think he just started to learn the skill, Tia said with her lips pursed. Felix laughed and said, I know him. He is that guy who claimed to challenge all of the disciples of the elite house. I see. I promise you that I can destroy his confidence in learning the skills of drawing runes. He will give it up and never touch them again. Good. Now he is on the way to the market. You can go now, Tia said, nodding at him in dismissal. Tia believed Felix's skills of making runes without a doubt, or she would not give the protection array to him. After bidding farewell to Tia, Felix flew out of the ice palace and directly to the market. He was considering how he could go about finishing the work the head of the Cloud Hall had asked him to do. Having such a high-level accomplishment of making runes, he thought it to be a piece of cake to destroy the confidence of a beginner. He was sure that he could even cause Zen never to think about runes ever again. Soon, he arrived at the market. Right at that moment, he spotted Zen, who entered the shop of the World Commercial Alliance. The 4th grade of the nature level. It must be Zen, Felix told himself, seeing Zen up ahead. There were few nature creatures in the elite house and Zen was the only one that was at the 4th grade. Felix went into that shop without any hesitation. The old man of the shop of the World Commercial Alliance was holding a brush pen and writing down the sentences from an ancient jade. He had memorized the words of the ancient divine race that Zen had translated for him, and now he was trying to write them in the vernacular. Seeing Zen come in, the old man was surprised, but he didn't ask why Zen had come yet again. Instead, he bowed his head in greeting. Mr. Luo, nice to see you. What can I do for you today? Do you still want to buy some materials here? If Zen really wants to learn the skills of making runes, the materials he bought yesterday should be enough for him to use for a long time, the old man thought to himself. Before Zen could respond, there was a voice from outside. Lassiter, long time no see. How are you these days? So the old man was named Lassiter Shang. He always stayed in the shop in the Cloud Hall and Felix was the most famous runic expert who always came to his shop to buy something. Felix and Lassiter were on very familiar terms with each other. Hearing the voice, the old man recognized it as Felix's voice. A smile appeared on his face. Actually, Lassiter was not always bad-tempered or he could not be the steward of the World Commercial Alliance. Customers like Felix were always welcomed in Lassiter's shop. My business is just so-so. Please come here more frequently. We are all counting on you, Lassiter replied with a smile, gesturing to his men to fetch Felix some tea. As he entered the shop, Felix looked over at Zen. He smiled. And who is this young man, may I ask? He's a disciple of your elite house. He just started to practice the skills of making runes. Oh, by the way, that reminds me. Lassiter turned back to Zen and said kindly, this is the best runic expert in the Cloud Hall. Zen, if you really want to learn the skill of making runes, it is a good idea to ask for his advice. Chapter 409, Ridicule. Zen had been taught to produce the divine textures. The rune production techniques of Central Region were nothing compared to it. But he did hear Lassiter's instructions. Felix was the top runic expert of Cloud Hall, a person with great influence, whom Zen wouldn't even dare to offend. This was why when they met, he immediately bowed respectfully. I'm just an amateur. I may not even be half as professional as you are when it comes to rune production. But I do hope to learn from you and I wish you could put me under your tutelage. Felix didn't respond to him. Instead, he eyed the young man from head to toe. He was incredibly proud of his accomplishments in rune production. He wasn't someone to teach amateurs the basics. Besides, his visit today was ordered by Tia, who had commanded him to criticize and belittle Zen. How could he possibly provide Zen with any directions? Show me what you've got, Felix stated straightforwardly. Zen nodded quietly, accepting the instruction. He had been planning to have the divine textures he drew yesterday evaluated. Even if they were novice work, he wanted to see where he lay in mastery. I bought some materials yesterday and drew these two runes, overnight. Please have a look at them. Zen said, stuttering in between his speech. He didn't want Felix to know that his work was divine textures. He wished Felix didn't hear his stutter. Luckily enough, they didn't figure it out, but were shocked nonetheless. Their eyes were wide and their mouth opened slightly in disbelief. How could Zen have turned the materials into a rune within just a day? Lassiter was even more dumbfounded than Felix. He knew Zen was nothing but a newbie, with barely little to no knowledge in rune production. At the beginning, he had assumed that the materials Zen bought would have turned into waste by now. He had been even pitying the materials Zen bought since they were top-tier quality. Men who didn't know how to handle the materials should have destroyed them by now. It was something every runic expert had to experience in order to learn and improve in their craft. That was why it cost a lot more money to cultivate a runic expert than a master warrior. But using level 4 materials in the beginning was a risk because nobody would ever have crafted a rune at this stage. Lassiter had been expecting that Zen would ask for more materials. But Zen exceeded everyone's expectations by being able to produce a rune this quickly. What did Zen think a rune was? A picture with several strokes of whatever material. Just a bunch of doodles and sketches. Lassiter cleared his throat before speaking. Mr. Luo, you have just learned how to produce runes. Are you telling us you've completed not 1, but 2 runes, after just a day's worth of practicing? That's impressive. Come, let us have a look at your masterpiece. Felix felt like laughing out loud. He now understood where Zen's arrogance was coming from. He understood why Zen challenged all the disciples of the elite house. It wasn't because he had the ability. It was because Zen was insane. This man couldn't be of right mind. Nobody could have drawn a rune on his very first try, and he wouldn't dare proclaim that he'd succeeded. Did Zen even know what a rune was? He probably didn't. There was no way he could know and be this arrogant to say his creation was a rune. I'm also interested in Mr. Luo's work. Let's have a look, Felix said mischievously. He could see his assigned work done. He could completely ruin this man with just a few words. Zen complied almost immediately. He took out one of the divine textures from the space ring and presented it to Felix. Please feel free to critique the work. I know I may still have a lot to improve on. Zen stepped back to let his superiors inspect his work. Lassiter and Felix walked up to the desk and fixed their eyes on the rune. The longer they had a look at it, the wider their grins got. What was this? Although the runes and divine textures were originated from the same material, divine textures had been passed down for thousands of generations. The complexity of divine textures exceeded the imagination of any runic expert of Central Region. And that was why Zen's rune looked obscure and bizarre to the two of them. In their eyes, there was no technique in his drawing whatsoever. Before Lassiter could shred him to pieces, he decided that Felix should speak first. Felix was also tasked to shrink Zen's pride down to size. According to Tia, he had to prevent Zen from learning rune making. But seeing what Zen had made, he didn't have to worry about accomplishing his task. Zen had absolutely no idea about what runes were. Zen had the audacity to think that his scribbles were at par to what runes really were. Listen, lad, runes are like small magic arrays. They'll only work if the connection within the lines is first established. An amateur would have been able to get that immediately. But you not only ruined the material, you missed every key point in learning rune production. It's garbage. I don't think you're equipped to practice in this field any longer. You aren't suited for this profession, Felix said coldly, sneering at the young man. Zen was shocked by what he had heard. He was simply asking them to evaluate his pieces, not his work ethic or talents. He hadn't even met this Felix before. Why was he being so rude towards him? As shocked as he was, Zen tried to keep his emotions in check. He merely smiled and nodded towards Felix, before turning to Lassiter. Manager, what do you think? Lassiter cleared his throat and waved his hand dismissively. I think Felix has made my point for me. On the inside, Lassiter was laughing to himself. Evaluate. What's there to evaluate? This piece of trash. If you hadn't helped me translate the Phoenix clan's ancient language, you would have already been driven out from here. Zen, confused as he was, actually took the hint. Is my work really that bad? Zen thought quietly, shoulders slumping dejectedly. He tried to rack his brain for a reason. Cyan dragon, come out. Did you trick me? Were you just lying when you told me about the divine textures? The cyan dragon kept quiet. What Zen didn't know was that the cyan dragon was absolutely furious. He thought Zen's works were magnificent, so much that he even thought about making Zen his protege once he trained more. What Lassiter and Felix said was like a slap on the dragon's face. His temper was starting to boil up. Who cares what those idiots think? The two of them know nothing about divine texture. They don't know what they're talking about. The cyan dragon couldn't help but curse the two men in displeasure. What? Are you saying it's their fault then? So what do I do? Zen asked. What do? You leave, of course. These two idiots do not know what they're doing. Do not dignify their hideous standards by responding to them, the cyan dragon said angrily. Zen was hesitant. He knew what the cyan dragon was capable of. He knew that the cyan dragon must have at least an extensive amount of knowledge considering how long he had been alive. But at the same time, he didn't want to offend Felix and Lassiter if he didn't take their criticism well. But before Zen could even say anything, Felix spurred him out of his train of thought. Just forget about this training, young man. Martial arts could bring you fame and fortune if you're focused on that instead. You may be right, but let's get back to the runes, shall we? I don't think my rune is so bad. You said it was garbage, but we haven't even activated it yet. Could you take a look again after we activate it? Zen suggested. Felix shot a look at Lassiter and he had done the same. They smirked together. In Central Region, mastering rune production was a skill that had been passed down for thousands of years. Those who were able to produce runes were divided into two schools, the North and the South. Normally, a runic expert would need to master in one specific school. Felix, however, was able to hone his knowledge from both fields. His skill and knowledge was what got him the position as Cloud Hall's top runic master. He was adept at drawing both the delicate rune types from the south and the ferocious rune types of the north. That gave him some leverage and credibility for Zen to believe him. If what Zen made was truly a meditation rune, it must be something that Felix had never seen before. A feat so impossible to happen. Felix shook his head in frustration. How dare you, young man? Do you really think that this abomination of a scribble is a rune? No special tools or special materials would be able to activate such a thing if you can't even understand the basics. Your drawing is not a rune. I've said this many times. No matter how much energy you have put in there, that thing cannot be activated. Felix spat angrily. Zen, seemingly defeated, sighed heavily. It would be impossible to knock some sense into these men. They didn't have the heart to believe in Zen and this incredibly unique rune. Instead, he was going to convince them by showing them. Zen walked closer to the rune. With a wave of his hand, a string of energy flowed into the divine texture. Almost immediately, the divine texture lit up. The meditation rune began to glow softly in light cerulean blue, a sign that the potent kudzu root was activated. At the same time, energy seemed to emanate from the meditation rune, almost immediately striking the three men. Under the cyan glow, the three of them had suddenly felt incredibly refreshed and light-footed, ready to seize the day with newfound energy. It also felt like their spirits had been lifted. Feeling the immediate effect of the rune, Lassiter was dumbfounded. He knew how powerful Zen's rune was compared to those he had seen in his life as a merchant's. Felix's face, however, was racked with horror. What Lassiter must have deduced was correct. It was powerful, but since Felix was one of the best runic experts in Central Region, he was able to pinpoint several characteristics about Zen's rune. Felix noted the rune strokes. Before they were activated they seemed so poorly made and amateurish. But now that they glowed, he knew what that light was and what the rune had meant. Felix began to stutter as he realized what it was. It's this color. It's the perfect brushwork. Chapter 410, Bidding. Now it was clear why Felix had been so surprised. That being said, the perfect brushwork still appeared to be rather unremarkable in the cyan dragon's eyes. The upper world was just too vast and massive. Even amongst all of the various species, powers, and influences, talents almost seemed like they came a dime a dozen. In order to achieve excellency in the mastery of the divine texture, one must first become proficient in the basic skill called the perfect brushwork. But Zen managed to leave the cyan dragon quite amazed after finding out that he was able to comprehend the perfect brushwork within a span of just one day. That was also the main reason why the cyan dragon cursed both Felix and Lassiter, referring to them as stupid idiots. They were nowhere near being qualified to give any remarks on the divine texture. Even though the cyan dragon was under the assumption that the perfect brushwork wasn't that big a deal, that wouldn't necessarily mean that Felix would also have the same point of view. The fact of the matter was that Felix wasn't really able to fully grasp the perfect brushwork. And it wasn't just him either. Of all the runic experts residing in the Central Region, none were able to get the hang of it. The perfect brushwork had been in existence for such a long time in the history of the Central Region, but that was almost eons ago. 2 millennia prior to this day, a runic expert named Arnold Fung had unraveled the secrets of the perfect brushwork and activated the properties and energy of the materials while drawing the runes. Therefore, from that moment onwards, he became known as the Son of Runes. Up until now, a huge portion of his works was still being kept by the people in the world. Of those works, the most famous piece of work was the sect-protecting array belonging to the ethereal spirit sect, making it the lone 5th-grade sect located in the central region. That sect-protecting array was an outstanding example of Arnold Fung's masterful skills. Thanks to the sect-protecting array, the ethereal spirit sect was able to survive a string of catastrophic events and develop from a simple 3rd-grade sect and end up being the strongest as well as the only 5th-grade sect in the central region at present. Ethereal spirit sect was able to become a 5th-grade sect, largely thanks to the verity that it was able to bring forth a number of gifted people from generation to generation. However, the sect-protecting array was also a very significant component to that. If not anything else, it somehow sheltered the ethereal spirit sect from being annihilated by a cataclysm. Arnold Fung had a lot of accomplishments under his belt. Of course, the sect-protecting array surely wasn't the only surviving piece left in the world. There were numerous other rune fragments, a large portion of which had already been through the passage of time, therefore, there was no way for them to be activated ever again. Having said that, one could still say that there were still a lot of collectors enticed by them for the sole reason that they had been crafted by the renowned Arnold Fung. Generally speaking, they could go for outrageous prices beneath the black market or possibly inside an auction. It seemed like Felix had been blessed with enough luck to be able to witness the perfect brushwork be performed once. It happened during the time when he went along with the head of the Cloud Hall to go for a visit on the ethereal spirit sect. The ethereal spirit sect was so eager to put on airs so they activated a small portion of their sect-protecting array. It was at that moment that he got extremely amazed by the perfect brushwork of Arnold Fung. Even at present day, he could still vividly see the scene playing out in front of him, making his heart start racing. It was a feeling filled with not just adulations, but most importantly, reverence toward the master who mastered the perfect brushwork. So when he finally laid his eyes on the execution of the perfect brushwork for a second time, he was so captivated by the meticulous perfect brushwork before his very eyes, somehow forgetting the fact that it had been done by Zen himself. Lassiter just stood there completely dumbfounded as he had no idea just what to make of it. He had a much too different perspective compared to Felix. As a trader, a merchant, of course he had heard of the perfect brushwork. Despite the fact that he had never seen it before himself, he was quite aware of how much the runes works of Arnold Fung were priced in the market even if they had already lost their effects. As one would expect, the runes constructed by Arnold Fung were being sold at such ridiculous rates only because of his fame. The perfect brushwork, on the other hand, seemed like it would be such a good selling point. And it could even be activated, so what more could one ask for? With a simple whistling noise, Felix shifted his gaze over to Zen. Resting his hands on Zen's shoulders and shaking them, he enthusiastically asked him in high spirits, Do you know who created this meditation rune? Could you please tell me? Watching Felix's behavior, Zen rolled his eyes and glared at him intensely. Is this truly the mightiest runic expert at the Cloud Hall? Surely, he must be a fraud. Zen was in doubt. Then, he tried to reply as calmly as he could, Would you please take your hands off me? I'll tell you once you let me go. Please forgive me. I'm sorry about that. Felix instantly loosened his grip and apologized. He realized that he was indeed acting impolitely. Nevertheless, he didn't really care, for he must know the answer to his question. So, now, would you mind telling me the name of the person who created this meditation rune? Puckering his lips, Zen replied, Haven't I told you already a second ago? Weren't you listening? Who? Felix and Lassiter asked simultaneously, clearly a bit confused. Zen felt like he was about to lose his mind, because he honestly thought that he had already made it clear enough for them. Even the dumbest of people in the world would be able to figure out that he was talking about himself. Sadly, these two men were real bird brains who couldn't understand that at all. Heaving a heavy sigh, he said, This meditation rune was my own creation. Fixating their gaze upon Zen, the two men promptly shook their heads almost instantaneously and blurted out in unison, I don't believe you. Believe it or not, I couldn't care less. Boss, would you mind helping me appraise the worth of this meditation rune? Zen couldn't afford to waste any more time arguing with Felix right there. After all, he didn't owe him anything to indulge his curiosity. Squinting his eyes, Lassiter simply bobbed his head. Being the businessman that he was, he never really dwelled on stuff like doubting things presented in front of him. The only thing that mattered to him was how much it was going to sell, not who made it or where it came from. That was how the mindset of a businessman should always be. Appraise. Evaluate. No, 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 you can't just go on selling something like that. Felix stopped Zen in his tracks, much like a deranged man. Hearing Felix's remark, Lassiter and Zen got so upset. Even though Lassiter and Felix were quite fond of each other, business was strictly business, and an acquaintance was just an acquaintance. They were two quite different kettles of fish altogether. The reason why Zen came here was to make some money from selling his work of meditation divine texture, but Felix, for whatever reason he might have, was trying to get in his way from doing that. What I'm trying to say is that if you're planning to sell it, then it would be best for you to only sell it to me. Felix interjected. Shrugging his shoulders, Zen made it obvious that it didn't really matter who would buy it, for as long that he could make some money out of it. But Lassiter and Felix couldn't see eye to eye. Lassiter blurted out, Felix, what are you trying to do? Zen came to my store of his own volition to do business with me, but you just randomly broke into my store and what? You went ahead and tried to steal my customer. So, what? Why should it matter? When you get right down to it, this place is under the ownership of the Cloud Hall. So, why shouldn't I be allowed to come here and do my business as well? Being the runic expert of Cloud Hall, despite the fact that Felix was merely at the medium stage of the internal elixir realm, he had the privilege of having a high position in the Cloud Hall. His position was actually just a tad bit lower than that of Emmanuel, Saint Morphans, and Elder Osmond. He wasn't inferior to any of the other general elders. Be that as it might, Lassiter wasn't fazed in any way, and still didn't have the slightest intention to give in. This place belongs to the Cloud Hall. Are you trying to pull my leg right now? This market was built by the World Commercial Alliance. In fact, it's still sponsored by them. Do you have the nerve to say that straight to the face of the head of the World Commercial Alliance that this market is owned by the Cloud Hall? If you dare say something like that, then I will cease going on with this meaningless banter and leave the premises at once. Watching in the sidelines as these two were having a discussion just made Zen even more restless. For what logical reason could I be wasting time standing here in silence not having sold my meditation divine texture yet? He was lost in thought. Zen interrupted them and said, stop arguing. I'm the owner of this rune, so it's only right that I get to decide whom I want to sell it to. Let's make this simple, the one who has the better offer gets to have it, understood? The men had been left at such a loss for words upon hearing the proposal. Only then were they able to come to the realization that the best way to address the issue lay in Zen himself. Did I hear that right? Bidding, I think that's a great idea. Lassiter was a little surprised at first, but after just a moment, he was already grinning like a Cheshire cat. As a part of the World Commercial Alliance, he had an edge whenever it came to things like auctions and bidding as opposed to Felix, and most of all, he had a lot of money to burn. Felix clenched his jaw in pride. For how much would you be willing to let it go? Just give me any amount and I will give you the money right away. It doesn't matter how much. A broad smile crept onto Zen's face as he listened to them. Well, isn't this just great? This is precisely what I have been looking for, he thought, trying to hide his excitement. After pondering about it for a while, Zen said, considering how much money I have forked out for the materials the day before, the meditation rune cost me just about 10,000 low-grade life vitality crystals. So, now, I'm thinking of doubling that, making it 20, so it should be about 20,000. Are you serious? The starting bid Zen had recommended utterly baffled them. A meager 20,000 life vitality crystals. Was that really all that he wanted? Was this guy serious? Had it only been a common rune, it would still go for a price significantly higher than that. Was this guy out of his mind? 500,000 low-grade life vitality crystals. For the reason that they would have to make him an offer he couldn't refuse for the rune, Lassiter decided to go at it rationally and started bidding immediately. A hint of excitement filled his eyes. In terms of runic knowledge, he indeed couldn't hope to measure up to Felix, but if it was all about business, Felix wouldn't be able to hold a candle against him. Since Felix detested Lassiter so much for arguing with him, he shot him an intense glare and yelled, 1 million low-grade life vitality crystals. I'm more than willing to trade for it with a supreme life vitality crystal. A single supreme life vitality crystal was worth 1 million low-grade life vitality crystals. Felix jumped the gun and offered a price twice as much as that of Lassiter's. 2 supreme life vitality crystals. Lassiter doubled the amount without batting an eye. There was just no way he'd lose to someone like Felix. How about 4 Supreme Life Vitality Crystals? Without letting Zen get a chance to think about Lassiter's offer, Felix shouted out and just continued bidding a higher amount. Listening as the price kept rising up, Zen could literally feel the blood surging to his brain that he was beginning to get a little lightheaded. Just imagine, a single Supreme Life Vitality Crystal would be equal to 1 million cubic crystals. Meaning 4 Supreme Life Vitality Crystals would be worth as much as 4 million cubic crystals. Never would he have thought that making the divine texture could be of great help for him to earn a huge sum of money. But how was it that a simple meditation divine texture piece could be valued at such an absurd amount? Truth be told, this meditation divine texture wouldn't really be worth that much anywhere else. In reality, the meditation divine texture was not that powerful. However, what piqued Lassiter's and Felix's interest the most was not its function, but the technique of the perfect brushwork which could be utilized through it. And solely for that purpose, namely, the perfect brushwork, this divine texture could be much sought after and worth a lot of money. F5. At that point, Lassiter started to get reluctant. Because he was a businessman first and foremost, he was well aware of his limitations. It was true that the perfect brushwork was employed in this meditation divine texture work, but the true worth of this work would only be put on display through the way of trading. Offering too high an amount, he could end up losing a lot of money in the process. And yet Felix's eyes still brightened up even after hearing that. Letting a conceited smile slip, he yelled again, 10. I offer you 10 Supreme Life Vitality Crystals. It was evident that, at that very moment, he had, without a doubt, absolutely forgotten his goal to stop Zen. Chapter 411, A Dilemma. A runic expert was considered a money-making machine these days. The cost of becoming a runic expert was high, but it was worth the investment because it could guarantee great returns. Hence, being a runic expert had brought many riches to Felix's pocket. However, 10 supreme crystals were still an extremely large expense to Felix despite having huge savings. Lassiter, who was richer than Felix, was unwilling to buy it at such high cost, as this meditation rune could only be used to soothe the nerves when cultivators practiced themselves but was useless in combat. Its value was not worth its price. Moreover, the source of this meditation rune posed a big mystery to everyone. They wondered where Zen could have gotten such an expensive rune. Generally, the most expensive runes known to all cultivators were drawn by Arnold, the son of runes. Although the runes he had drawn already lost their value, they could still be sold at a sky-high price in auctions. It was because those are the last runes Arnold had drawn before he drew his last breath. His death put an end to such talent in the central region, and no one had taken his place, being a talented rune expert ever since. The last runes he had made were considered collector's items and had become quite expensive. But the rune before Lassiter and Felix appeared to be still useful, which indicated that the person who drew it was still alive. It might not be considered a collectible yet, but because of the existence of this rune expert, even Arnold's last runes could lose their collectible status and their prices would crash. The value and price of a rune could soar high if the person who drew it had died. That was the case for Arnold's runes. However, this runic expert with such great talent could be a treasure to any sect. It would be a shame to let such a talented runic expert go to waste. Considering all these, Lassiter found it difficult to eventually give up. Fine, I'll take the 10 supreme crystals then, Zen said with a slight smile. When Zen agreed to the price, Felix immediately took out 10 supreme crystals from his space ring and handed it over. Zen was so delighted to see the 10 supreme crystals full of pure life vitality in his hands. But he had to play it cool, so he tried to hide the excitement on his face. These 10 supreme crystals were equivalent to 10 million cubic crystals. But that was based only on general equivalent exchange. Considering the market price of each supreme crystal, Zen could exchange them for a total of 20 million cubic crystals. In the past, Zen thought that refining heavenly essence was already profitable business. If given ample time, he could make a lot of money with his heavenly essence. But in the central region, Zen realized that the money he was making out of refining heavenly essence was nothing. After handing the payment over to Zen, Felix took the divine texture from Zen. He was holding it delicately like a baby and was totally absorbed in the bliss of divine intoxication. Felix had once seen the perfect brushwork on the sect protection array of Ethereal Spirit Sect, and he fell in love with it at the first sight. He was captivated and stunned to see it for the first time, but never really considered owning one. But now, he finally got himself a rune drawn with perfect brushwork. Though it was only a meditation rune, he was still fascinated by it. Lassiter just stood there and watched as Felix got the rune from Zen. He was also a collector and had once seen the authentic work of Arnold. But as a merchant, he must always remain calm and not let his emotions drive his purchase. Lassiter was also keen on this rune, but he was hesitating to spend 10 supreme crystals on it. Lassiter then looked at Zen carefully. He was trying to comprehend how Zen could have possibly gotten this meditation rune. It was highly unlikely that Zen had drawn it himself. But if Zen had acquired it from someone else, he should know where the runic expert was. Lassiter couldn't keep his mouth shut. He was eager to know where the said rune came from. So, he washed the suspicion off his face, smiled, and asked, "Mr. Luo, where did you get it?" Zen was still immersed in the joy of getting the 10 supreme crystals. He heard Lassiter's inquiry and sensed the suspicion in the latter's tone, but he didn't care. He just laughed and said, "I have told you several times that I drew this rune myself. I even bought the painting materials from you yesterday." Upon hearing this, Lassiter thought that Zen just didn't want to tell the truth. But he was not the type to just give up, so he continued, "This is no time for a joke." The expression on Lassiter's face changed, but he tried to keep his cool. He continued, "Mr. Luo, if you know this runic expert, please introduce me to him. I'd like to personally meet him and buy as many runes as I can from him directly." "Sure, I still have 7 runes here. If you really want them, I can sell them to you." Zen smiled broadly. Without looking at Lassiter, Zen took out other 7 meditation divine textures from his space ring and casually tossed them on the table. Felix was still overwhelmed with his newly acquired meditation rune. He thought that it was the most precious rune and no one else could have it aside from him. But when Zen tossed 7 more of the same runes, he was speechless. How could that be possible? When Lassiter saw those runes, a smirk crossed his face. The old cliché was proven true: elderly people are more experienced. When Zen first offered the meditation rune, Lassiter kept his calm and stopped bidding for it in time. He understood the power of waiting, and now he believed it was a wise decision after all. In this world, the worth of an item depended on its amount or number. When an item was rare and unique, its price would certainly soar and only the richest person could afford it. But as the number or amount of the said item increased, its worth would be lesser. Lassiter also took this into consideration earlier. That was why he didn't bite into Zen's bidding. "Are they still useful?" Lassiter asked as he examined each rune carefully. Zen didn't respond. He just poured 7 rays of life vitality from his wrist into these 7 divine textures. Instantly, the textures lighted up, filling the whole room with cyan-like glow. Lassiter's eyes gleamed at the sight of the glowing runes. He couldn't believe his eyes. His heart felt like exploding, but he regained control over his emotions. He must remain objective. He finally said, "Interesting. I will take them all. But the price?" He looked at each rune again, carefully assessing its market value. He didn't want to pay 10 supreme crystals for each rune. After all, their value had already gone down due to the increased numbers. "Your runes are likely to be of a new kind, and because they are drawn with perfect brushwork, their efficacy will be 30% higher compared to the normal ones. But as you know, meditation runes are of limited use. So, how about 5 supreme crystals for all the 7 runes?" Lassiter grinned. He was haggling at a very low price. He gave Zen the impression that his runes wouldn't cost more than 1 supreme crystal each. It was a take it or leave it deal. But Lassiter's offer was sound and reasonable. After all, these divine textures were not considered as a combat class. They were just the prototypes from Zen's practice. Even though the efficiency of the runes was better than that of ordinary meditation runes in the central region, it was impossible to sell them at an extremely high price. Moreover, Lassiter offered the price because he had never seen such rune pattern in central region and thought it was worth studying. Felix had bought the first meditation rune for 10 supreme crystals out of the sour of the moment. At that time, he wouldn't let Lassiter have it, hence, he instantly bid 10 supreme crystals for it. Lassiter was stunned at Felix's offer and decided to just give up. But it turned out, Lassiter got the last laugh. Considering what Lassiter had said, Zen smiled and said, "Deal." Besides, he had nothing to lose. These were just his prototype and 5 supreme crystals were more than enough. "No, I object. That's not fair." After hearing Zen agreed with the deal, Felix was pissed off. He had just paid 10 supreme crystals for just 1 meditation rune. But soon after, Zen had agreed to give Lassiter 7 meditation runes for half the amount what he paid for one. He felt scammed. He wouldn't allow Lassiter to get the 7 runes for only 5 supreme crystals. Why not? Zen was not the type to hold grudges, but Felix's scornful words echoed in his ears. It was as if Felix intentionally embarrassed him in front of another person, and that was something he wouldn't let go easily. I gave you 10 supreme crystals for 1 rune just now, so how come he can buy all 7 runes for 5 supreme crystals only? That's quite a difference, and it's not fair. Felix said with bitterness. He felt like he was cheated by Zen. The happiness of acquiring a rune with perfect brushwork was replaced by anger and bitterness towards Zen and Lassiter. Though it was easy for a runic expert like Felix to make money, the 10 supreme crystals were still a great deal of money for him. What do you mean? Zen said with a cold smile. I didn't force you to buy the rune for 10 supreme crystals, did I? No, you didn't, Felix said as he shook his head. But. So, that's it. Our deal is done, so don't ruin this next deal for me. Zen said. He sat down on a chair without looking at Felix. He turned to Lassiter and said, please settle the account and then give me the painting materials on my list. With a triumphant smile, Lassiter carefully sorted out the 7 meditation runes while telling his helper to prepare the materials on the list. He felt victorious not only by acquiring the 7 runes at a small price, but also being one step ahead of Felix on this deal. Felix was pulling a long face now, but he could do nothing. He looked at the rune which cost him 10 supreme crystals and told himself he wouldn't be so imprudent in the future. It was a lesson that he learned at a high cost. He wanted to get his money back from Zen by all means. But he suddenly remembered that his main task was to embarrass Zen. How could he almost forget it? Felix thought to himself, wait a minute. Zen kept on saying that these meditation runes were drawn by himself. Maybe it is true. Otherwise, he couldn't have gotten the 8 identical runes. The runic expert must at least achieve master level before acquiring the talent of perfect brushwork. Each rune is a priceless item for any runic expert, and they wouldn't let anyone have it unless for a higher price. So, why would a master, even if he is a nameless hermit, give his works to such a young fellow? There was only one way to prove his assumption, and that was to ask Zen himself. Felix cleared his throat, and asked, did you really draw these runes? Zen was getting irritated, but there was no use to get mad at Felix. He just nodded casually. I believe I have told you 100 times already. I don't like repeating myself. But, Felix wanted his argument to be good as to not let Zen dodge the question. He stuttered at first, but with his fast thinking, he suddenly came up with a good idea. He took out a runic pen from his space ring and set painting papers and ink on the table. He then said, to see is to believe. Now, show us what you've got. Prove it right now. Zen looked at the runic pen that Felix was forcefully handing him and winked. There's no need for me to prove anything to you. You must. If you claim to have written these runes by yourself, then, you must prove it. Otherwise, you're just blabbering and that's bad for business, Felix said hastily. His desperate action to embarrass Zen didn't do any good to his reputation. As the chief runic expert of Cloud Hall and an elite of the internal elixir realm, he had been looked up to by Zen. But now, something about his actions made Zen think twice. Sorry, I'm not interested. Zen said. He pushed aside the runic pen and took the 5 supreme crystals and the painting materials from Lassiter. He was about to leave when Felix suddenly headed him off and begged, come on, please. Lassiter watched how Felix tried to embarrass himself. He just shook his head in disappointment. In the Cloud Hall, Felix was considered more honorable than the elders. With his status in Cloud Hall, he was respected by everyone. No one imagined that he would be a nibble humble pie in front of an inferior. Zen stopped. He stared at Felix then turned his eye at the livid runic pen. He then suddenly said with a smile, fine. Looks like you give me no choice. I will do it in one condition. Name it. Felix asked eagerly. If I can prove that I drew these runes myself, you will give me your runic pen. Zen chuckled. He looked at Felix carefully, studying the changes in his facial expression. Deep down, Zen was enjoying every bit of this deal. Felix had dug his own grave by challenging Zen. If he agreed and Zen lost, he could gain back not only his reputation but also embarrass Zen. But what if he lost and Zen could prove that he wrote the runes himself? He was in a dilemma right now. He couldn't afford to lose his special runic pen to an inferior. Chapter 412. Puzzled Tia. The runic brush pens greatly differed from one another. A well-chosen one could be of great help to a runic expert. The one Zen had bought from Lassiter's shop was made of hematite. Beginners often chose this kind of pens to use. Although it was easily controlled by the soul, Zen thought it was too heavy to wield freely. The runic brush pen was used to draw simple runes. If the user made a mistake, the rune would be ruined. However, some huge arrays consisted of hundreds or even thousands of runes. For instance, the sect-protecting array Tia gave Felix was estimated to have more than 13,000 runes. Even the smallest mistakes weren't tolerated in the making of such large-scale arrays. Although some individual runes might be replaced in case of mistakes happening, it was crucial that the most important one in the center of the sect-protecting array, which contained thousands of lines, be made with no mistakes at all. If there was even a single, tiny error, the whole array would fail to perform its function. Thus, a good runic pen was important for a runic expert to make a huge rune. Felix's pen was made from the tip of a fiery cloud bamboo. The bamboo tip could remain soft and alive up to 100 years. Moreover, it nurtured the strength of a soul that was put into the bamboo tip. Both the outside shell and the tip of the brush pen were made of the best materials. It had a good weight, was comfortable to hold, and had a stable brush tip. This runic pen was worth at least 3 Supreme Life Vitality crystals in a market. Since Felix was the top runic expert in the Cloud Hall, he, of course, had more than one runic pen. However, this bamboo one was his favorite and he always carried it with him wherever he went. "It's fine if you don't want to give me this runic pen," Zen said to Felix and said no more. But before Zen could step out of the shop, Felix made up his mind and decided to agree with Zen. "Okay, if you can show me the perfect brushwork, this runic pen is yours." A satisfied smile crossed Zen's lips. He was willing to showcase his skills in exchange for a free, top runic brush pen. However, when he saw the runic ink Felix brought out, he frowned. "What is this ink for?" he asked. "This is used for drawing the 3-star rune, Sun Flame rune," Felix answered. The rune he mentioned was a frequently needed one. Many cultivators had asked him to make it, so Felix prepared enough ink and carried it with him all day. "I'm not familiar with the Sun Flame rune. I just started learning how to draw runes and I can only make 1-star ones," Zen shook his head and explained. In fact, Zen only could draw the 1-star meditation rune. However, Felix didn't intend for Zen to make the 3-star Sun Flame rune. He only wanted him to draw a line to show his perfect brushwork. Since the materials of the ink and its manufacturing process were both different from Zen's own meditation divine texture, Zen then brought out his own ink. He just started learning rune making a little while ago. He only knows how to draw the 1-star rune, but he can draw runes with perfect brushwork. It's so strange, Felix thought. If he's really a beginner, it would have been hard for him to hold the brush pen perfectly. How can he do perfect brushwork then? It really is unbelievable, Felix wondered in his mind. Then again, Zen confidently told him he was a starter, so Felix thought that he probably wasn't lying. Felix felt that his case was really weird. It was like a newly born baby that could speak out a profound poem at his first time to open his mouth. It was really beyond Felix's imagination. With that in mind, Felix decided to keep watching. He really couldn't believe that Zen could do perfect brushwork. If it was really true, he was willing to give Zen his precious runic pen, as he thought that it was well worth it. A little excitement coursed through Zen as he held the black runic pen. This runic pen was excellent. It was suitable for his hand and felt perfect. When Zen divided a piece of his soul and put it into the runic pen, he didn't feel cold like before. On the contrary, he felt that a piece of his soul was dipped in warmth. It felt quite comfortable. "This runic pen must belong to me," Zen mentally told himself. Zen smiled as he dipped the runic pen in his ink. Then, he started to draw on the paper. At that moment, all eyes were on the runic pen's tip, including Felix, Lassiter, and even all the shop's waiters. They didn't believe Zen and wanted to see how long he could go on with his pretending. The moment that the pen tip touched the paper, Zen had stratified all the materials contained in the ink. He had continuously practiced drawing 8 pieces of the runes last night, so he was very familiar with the features of the materials needed to make the meditation rune. A beam of cyan light suddenly shone and a perfect line appeared on the paper. "Incredible, it's really incredible," Felix repeated to himself. When Felix saw the cyan light, he was so shocked that he couldn't say anything at that moment. Meanwhile, Lassiter's expression suddenly changed as well. As a member of the World Commercial Alliance, he had a sharp sense. He immediately realized how precious Zen was. Zen's future achievements probably won't be lesser than Arnold's. Our World Commercial Alliance must keep a good relationship with him at any cost. I have to report this to the headquarters of the World Commercial Alliance. Lassiter thought. A perfect line slowly stretched on the paper. The skill of perfect brushwork was clear in all the energy in the ink. Soon enough, the brush tip had left the paper surface. This runic pen is mine now, isn't it? Zen asked Felix with a smile. Felix nodded. He stared at Zen with an amazed expression on his face as if he had found a priceless thing. At that moment, Felix really admired Tia for her sharp insight. Tia was right. Zen was really outstanding and it was worth cultivating him at any cost. As the top runic expert in the Cloud Hall, he and the others had heard a lot about Zen. They clearly knew that it was Tia who made Zen challenge the elite house disciples. Since Tia was quite young, a lot of elders secretly blamed her. They all said that she had made a big mistake. What Tia actually meant to do was to make all the elite house disciples serve as practice targets for Zen. Even if Zen had such amazing talents, was he worth being cultivated like this? Because Tia was short-tempered, most elders didn't tell her off to her face and secretly complained about her instead. Although Tia was still at the illuminating soul realm due to her cultivation method, the Sutra of Empyrean Goddess, there was still someone very powerful backing her in the Cloud Hall. Before, Felix also secretly agreed with the elders. He was even reluctant to accept this task that Tia asked him to do. Why would he bother to destroy Zen's confidence in learning how to draw runes? It was selfish of Tia to do so. She had used so many resources for Zen's cultivation, as if the Cloud Hall belonged to Zen himself. But now, Felix was sincerely convinced by Tia. It was really worth to cultivate Zen with all of the Cloud Hall's resources. But Tia had only used the elite house and just one person, Morphins, to do so, which he now thought was not enough. Zen happily put the runic pen into his space ring. He came to the market today and gained a lot. He had not only sold out all the divine textures he had made yesterday for good prices, but also obtained an excellent runic bush pen. How could he not be happy about it? Many thanks to you guys, Zen said to them with a smile, and left. Felix and Lassiter glanced at each other. Both of them realized how precious Zen was. Lassiter paid more attention to Zen's commercial value, while Felix thought about how Zen could be useful to the Cloud Hall. They wouldn't have much conflict, but they had different interests. The World Commercial Alliance was called the uncrowned king in this world. Although Zen was a disciple of the Cloud Hall, they could not stop Zen from having a good relationship with the World Commercial Alliance. Felix left the shop hurriedly and flew toward the Ice Palace as quickly as light. The Ice Palace was located at the top of the Cloud Hall. It was covered with freezing fog now. The little Ice Phoenix stood guard at the gate of the Ice Palace. It was time for Tia to cultivate herself. The Sutra of Empyrean Goddess was difficult to practice. One had to give up his cultivation all 9 times in a row. In each time, one must start cultivation from the nature level. Then, the cultivation level would be improved bit by bit until it reached the internal elixir realm. After that, it must be given up again. This must be repeated 9 times. This meant Tia needed to cultivate herself 9 times, unlike others who only needed to do this once. Some cultivators without such an excellent talent could not break through the internal elixir realm, even if they had practiced hard for hundreds of years or their whole lives. Moreover, even if they succeeded, most of them would stay in that realm and it was hard for them to improve and reach higher. However, finishing all these levels wasn't hard for Tia since she was so talented. Besides, all of her energy meridians had gotten through after she broke through the internal elixir realm by the Sutra of Empyrean Goddess for the first time. So each time Tia gave up her cultivation, she only needed half a year to recover. This was the last time Tia had to give up her cultivation. It seemed like she would recover soon. When Tia was in the Cloud Road, she was only at the grade 1 of the Illuminating Soul Realm. Now only 1 month had passed, and she was at grade 7 of the Illuminating Soul Realm. She would soon enter the Internal Elixir Realm and even a higher level. Tia's head was down as she sat in the Ice Palace. Wisps of life vitality turned into a frozen aura, and whirled around her like glittering diamonds. Shiz. A message rune was suddenly sent into the Ice Palace. It burned itself near Tia's ear. Tia frowned slightly. Everyone in the Cloud Hall knew that it was her cultivation time. No one dared to interrupt her unless something significant happened that needed her attention. However, after the message rune finished burning itself, Tia's eyes shot open. The ice in her eyes melted and disappeared in her pupils. She waved her hand slightly. Soon the freezing fog of the whole ice palace was dispersed and scattered around. Then, it gradually turned into shards of ice on the ground. "Please come in," Tia said coldly. However, she also looked confused. What on earth does Felix want to say? He surely knows that I am cultivating myself now, and he still used message rune to interrupt me and ask to see me. I just asked him to destroy Zen's confidence in learning making runes. Did anything unusual happen? Tia thought before Felix came in. After she started to practice her skills, Tia naturally did not have time to watch the picture slab. Thus, she did not know what had happened in Lassiter's shop. Chapter 413, Felix was unlucky. Felix rushed into the ice palace. He almost slipped and fell as he walked too fast on the ice palace's slippery floor. It was rare for a cultivator at the internal elixir realm to have such an accident. "Felix, what is happening? Why are you in such a hurry? Did something happen to the sect protecting array?" Tia asked before Felix could greet her as usual. Tia frowned as she could not understand why Felix was in such a rush. What perplexed her more was his expression. He appeared frightened. He didn't come here for Zen's case, did he? Tia told herself. "No, there is nothing wrong with the array. I'm here because of Zen," Felix said quickly. "Oh, no, I apologize for my rudeness." Felix quickly bowed to Tia and greeted her respectfully. "Zen, what happened?" Tia nodded her head and asked, "That's why you came dashing in here?" Her brows wrinkled as Tia felt that it was unreasonable for Felix to interrupt her cultivation because of Zen. Felix could have waited until the next day. Tia felt as though Felix was behaving strangely. From what she knew, Felix could have shamed Zen into abandoning his quest to learn the skills of drawing runes. He could have directed Zen's focus toward cultivation instead. After all, most cultivators did so. "Yes, exactly, miss. I want to talk to you about Zen," Felix nodded and replied to Tia reverently. "What is it? Did you do as asked? Did Zen lose his confidence to acquire rune-making skills?" Tia asked. Tia smiled slightly. Felix was Cloud Hall's top runic expert. His knowledge of runes was unparalleled in the central region. It would surely be easy for him to deal with a beginner like Zen. Tia knew that Felix did not need to do much. A little dissuasion from Felix would have been sufficient to stop Zen. Felix had thought the same before he met Zen. When he learned that Zen had finished drawing some runes, he planned to comment on his works harshly. After all, most beginners would make several mistakes when they made their first runes. Felix had such vast knowledge of rune making that he would be able to identify mistakes in the work of a runic maker with exceptional skills. Zen was a beginner, and so, his mistakes would be easier to identify. However, Zen had made runes unlike any that Felix had ever seen. How could he criticize Zen as planned? Seeing that rune had been activated and that Zen had used perfect brushwork, Felix felt embarrassed about his skills. Of course, he was not qualified to criticize Zen's work. Felix didn't even know how to use the skill of perfect brushwork. How could he destroy Zen's confidence regarding rune making when Zen knew more than Felix? "No, Zen didn't," Felix answered, shaking his head. Tia asked in surprise, "What? You are looking pale. What happened exactly?" Felix cupped his hands to Tia and replied, "Miss, Zen has a remarkable talent for runes making. I believe we should not prevent him from learning these skills. His future achievements will probably be higher than that of Arnold Fung, the son of runes." Arnold Fung? Tia was shocked. Although Tia did not know much about runes, she had heard about the famous son of runes. Cloud Hall had gone so far as to preserve 2 works of runes made by Arnold. But after hearing Felix's explanation, Tia was more puzzled. Arnold was the most outstanding runic expert of the central region. No one has ever matched his level of expertise. Can Zen reach a higher level than Arnold in the future? Is Felix insane? Or did Felix think he could talk nonsense to me? Tia was lost in her thoughts. Then her face fell and she said angrily, "Felix, do you know what you are talking about? This is absurd. Are you teasing me?" Tia's tone conveyed a subtle warning to Felix. Tia, despite being young, had become the head of Cloud Hall. However, she didn't have much authority. After all, talent and qualifications were required to become the head of Cloud Hall. Tia was not old enough and did not have many qualifications. Since she lacked complete authority, she had a hard time controlling the elders of Cloud Hall. That was why Tia asked Felix if he was teasing her. "I dare not, and Zen is a runic genius. His talent for runes is even better than his martial arts. He just started to learn how to draw runes, and he has acquired the skill of perfect brushwork. It is said that Arnold grasped this skill in his 40s. Felix shook his head quickly. As a matter of fact, Felix attached great importance to Zen because of the lines of Zen's runes. Apparently, Zen drew the runes with his unique style, which was different from the two typical styles, the northern style and the southern style. Zen seemed to have created a new type of runes by himself. Few people were able to create runes. This was particularly true now as there was a lack of new types of runes. It could be said that creating a new type of runes could be as tricky as learning of the skill of perfect brushwork. Even Arnold, at his time, invented only 3 new types of runes. Of course, Felix did not know that what Zen had drawn was not a rune at all. It was the divine texture. The first divine texture made by Zen was called meditation divine texture. Its function was to calm one's mind. Since Felix was not knowledgeable about divine textures, he thought Zen had drawn a new type of rune. Although Felix sensed that the meditation runes Zen made seemed to calm one's mind better than a regular one, the effect of the meditation runes was difficult to quantify. So Felix could not compare the effects of the divine texture made by Zen with the regular meditation runes. If Zen could make runes for attacking in battles, Felix would have a better chance of sensing the differences. Hearing what Felix said, Tia smiled and asked, "Felix, is Zen really such an outstanding genius?" "Yes, Zen is. I am sure he." Felix answered Tia's question. An ice all flew toward Felix while he was still speaking. Surprised, Felix jumped up high. He barely dodged the ice all. Tia's expression had turned cold. An ice all shone in her hand. Apparently, it was Tia who was attacking Felix. Although Tia's cultivation base was lower than Felix's, he was a runic expert who was not good at close combat, even though he was at the internal elixir realm. Felix spoke with a bitter smile, "Miss, I'm serious. I would not lie to you." "Is that true? I'm also serious," Tia said coldly. After she finished, Tia waved her hand a second time. Several foot-long ice alls shot toward Felix again. Felix racked his brain for a solution. He needed to convince Tia before she killed him. The more he thought about it, the more Felix felt his plan would work. Quickly, he pulled out the meditation rune that he bought from Zen with 10 supreme crystals, and threw it at Tia. "Miss, I'm telling the truth. If you don't believe me, please look at this." Felix rolled over the slippery ground and pulled out his life vitality into the rune and said, "This is Zen's work." Felix almost shouted out the last sentence. At this moment, Felix was terrified. He was really unlucky. But he had no other choice. Had he not seen Zen draw the line with his own eyes, Felix would not have believed it either. It was challenging to convince Tia that Zen had more talents in making runes than Arnold, who was a born runic expert. The meditation divine texture began to shine as Felix's life vitality entered it. Tia stopped attacking Felix when she saw the green light. Surprised, she reached forward and grabbed the paper. Tia was by no means a runic expert. Even though she couldn't tell what kind of rune this was, or how effective it would be, Tia could see that the rune was beautiful. The lines of the divine texture were mellow and smooth. She could tell that the lines contained a sense of perfectness. "Is it true? Did Zen draw this?" Tia stared at Felix as she spoke. Ice crystals appeared in her eyes, and her cold tone tightened Felix's heart. "Exactly, miss. Zen drew this. I don't know how he learned the skill of perfect brushwork," Felix answered with a bitter smile on his face. "Oh, I see. This is why you disturbed my cultivation, right?" Tia nodded and asked. "Yes, this is the reason. I'm afraid that I cannot finish the task you assigned to me." "Maybe Zen can help with the protection array in the future," Felix explained. Then he continued, "The protection array of the ethereal spirit sect was drawn with the skill of perfect brushwork. Combined with the array of the grade 6 sect, Zen's skill will make our Cloud Hall's protection array be the strongest one in the central region." Tia did not reply. She never expected this would happen. Felix was unable to destroy Zen's confidence to learn the skill of drawing runes. On the contrary, he was convinced of Zen's potential. Could this young man, Zen, be such a genius? Tia was lost in her thoughts for a long while. When she realized that Felix was still in the Ice Palace, she waved her hand to dismiss him. "I know what you mean. Please leave me alone for a while, and I'll consider what you have said carefully." Felix sighed with relief and left. After thinking about it for a long time, Tia returned to her seat. Thick fog covered her body again. Before her beautiful face disappeared in the fog, Tia gave a slight smile. "I will let him continue and watch how high he can go," Tia thought before she started cultivating again. Chapter 414, The Wonders of Cloudy City. Of all the divine textures, the one-star divine texture was the basic. Some divine textures were considered much more powerful than one could ever imagine. The power of the divine texture was indicated in the number of stars in its name. The 7-star divine texture, for example, was only the size of a palm, but it could destroy a piece of land instantaneously. It had the power to destroy the whole central region. It was a powerful tool that could fall into the wrong hands and destroy the world. Zen still had a long way to go before he could master the 7-star divine texture drawing skill. Even the cyan dragon itself couldn't draw it as well as his soul energy had dried up. But even if the cyan dragon could, Zen still didn't have the right materials to draw the 7-star divine texture with. However, Zen was very interested in acquiring a 4-star divine texture called soul breath. This divine texture had a special function of doubling the efficiency of cultivation without any negative effect. His low cultivation had been his biggest worry since he entered the central region. But acquiring the divine texture called soul breath would be very helpful to him. He could improve his cultivation level much faster with the help of the divine texture. At an early age of 18, Zen had reached grade 4 of the nature level. With this achievement, he was already good enough in C County. However, in the Cloud sect, such achievement was just average. Comparing with the other disciples in the Cloud sect, Zen was just ordinary. And when he finally came to Central Region, his achievements were nothing at all. Zen's cultivation base was solid, and he had even challenged the Illuminating Soul Realm Masters. However, he still might not be able to escape death if he fought with a practitioner who reached the pinnacle of the Illuminating Soul Realm or the Internal Elixir Realm. Thus, improving his cultivation level had become an urgent concern he needed to address. Zen knew that Tia might have already figured that out too, so she had arranged the disciples of Elite House to compete with him in hopes that this would help him improve. However, Zen also knew that in achieving the maximum breakthrough in cultivation, one would also put his own life at risk. But the disciples of Elite House were not idiots. Among them were some high-rank practitioners of Cloud Hall who had figured out Tia's deliberate plan of sparring Zen with them. Furthermore, the plan had a loophole in favor of Zen. He could either choose to fight when his opponent was relatively weak or escape when his opponent was more powerful, and no one could catch him. Besides, the disciples of Elite House needed to fulfill the tasks assigned to them by Cloud Hall or cultivate in other locations. So there were a few times that Zen went to Elite House only to find out that there was no one available for him to challenge. Tia finally gave up after realizing that her plan wouldn't work. Without any means to progress his cultivation, Zen took some of his necessary belongings and then left Cloud Hall to collect the materials of the divine texture called soul breath. As the new day came, the golden rays of the sun shone over the walls of the Cloud Hall. The morning breeze whispered through its halls and slowly drifting clouds covered the entire Cloud Hall. Zen was standing at the edge of Cloud Hall. He was mesmerized as the sun waved its rays in between the valleys. He took a deep breath and jumped. Zen could use the flying chariot provided by Cloud Hall, but he decided not to. He took this as an opportunity to test the 1-star wind feather he had just made. In the upper world, wind feathers were only provided to disciples who were at the levels below the Illuminating Soul Realm. Thus, many disciples would opt to use the flying chariot. It was the first time for Zen to try it. After putting on the wind feather, Zen instantly felt a frail wind brush his body. It could only mean that despite not having reached the Illuminating Soul Realm yet, he could fly with the help of the wind feather. The wind became stronger. With the wind whirring through his body, Zen jumped down a height of more than 1,000 meters. With the combined energy released from the Phoenix Crystal and the natural power of wind, he floated like a leaf in the air. He had never felt this light in his life. After finding an ideal landing point, Zen slightly slowed down and let the wind take over. He floated freely but slowly before finally landing on the ground. This method was quite the same as the one Lewis had used. Meanwhile, 2 nature creatures who were on their way to town were stunned when they saw Zen, who appeared to be flying. They couldn't believe their eyes. Zen was also a nature creature like them, but he was already able to fly. These 2 practitioners came from Cloudy City. They were aware that there was a grade 4 sect called Cloud Hall from 1,000 meters above this area. They guessed that Zen must have floated down from that sect. Cloud Hall was known to be a great place where only very talented cultivators had the opportunity to practice. So, did that also mean that a nature creature from Cloud Hall could fly? Even after giving it a thought, the 2 nature creatures could not comprehend the possibility of a practitioner on their same level could learn how to fly. It was beyond anyone's imagination. Zen had seen the two nature creatures as he was attempting to land, but he ignored their presence. He rushed toward Cloudy City along the road he picked. Before taking on this journey, Zen had asked Lassiter about the branch of the World Commercial Alliance. He was told that it was in Cloudy City, hence the reason he was here. As he successfully landed, he immediately made his way to Cloudy City. As he entered, Zen couldn't help but notice the difference between the central region and the eastern region. With Cloud Hall and Cloud School located here, Cloudy City could be considered as the main city in the central region. Despite its size, it was still far better compared to the Burning Sky Imperial Capital in the eastern region. Top powerful clans were also present in the Burning Sky capital, such as the top 7 noble clans and the royal family. Cloud Sect was located there too, which was a Grade 2 sect. Aura's royal family could only be regarded as a Grade 2 Force 2, while the top 7 noble clans had no rank. The Cloudy City, on the other hand, had 8 Grade 3 sects. This did not include the Cloud School as it was affiliated to Cloud Hall and they shared the same system. On way to Cloudy City, practitioners at the Illuminating Soul Realm could be seen everywhere. And if one was lucky, he could even see some internal Elixir Realm practitioners. They walked in the streets in small groups. Their only purpose in coming to Cloudy City was to buy some supplements. On the streets of Cloudy City, no one paid attention to Zen. Though he was known in many other locations, in here, he was nobody. It was quite a relief for Zen because he didn't like much attention. This would make his journey a more pleasant one. He followed the instruction that Lassiter gave and immediately found the location of the Branch Alliance. Zen also had done some research about the World Commercial Alliance. He found out that although this alliance didn't rank in the power list, the power behind it was striking. It was even a little higher than Cloud Hall and at par with Ethereal Spirit Sect, the most powerful sect in the central region. Given its striking power, Zen was expecting to see a grand location of the branch. For the first time, he was concerned that he wasn't dressed enough to enter its office. However, when he finally reached the location, he was stunned. The Branch Alliance kept a very low profile. It was located among the dwellings and if not for the 2 Illuminating Soul Realm practitioners guarding the gate, no one would think that this was a special place. When Zen approached, one of the Illuminating Soul Realm practitioners gestured to him and said coldly, "Stop. This is the branch of the World Commercial Alliance. This is no place for a child like you. Now, turn around and be on your way." The World Commercial Alliance owned many shops in the central region, so generally, its branch wasn't involved in retail businesses. The practitioners would usually come here only for important issues or block trading. And these practitioners should have reached at least the pinnacle of the Illuminating Soul Realm, Internal Elixir Realm, or any level higher. Upon seeing Zen, the 2 Illuminating Soul Realm practitioners immediately recognized that Zen was just a nature creature. Given his level, he was not qualified to enter the gate. Thus, the 2 Illuminating Soul Realm practitioners insisted on driving Zen away. "Hey, buddy, you better leave soon. Don't waste our time. Our patience is short." Zen didn't like the attitude that the 2 Illuminating Soul Realm practitioners showed him. He frowned and thought, the World Commercial Alliance seems to think highly of itself. If I didn't need something from them, I wouldn't have come here. Then he took out an invitation letter from his pocket and tossed it to them. He said, "This is the invitation letter the World Commercial Alliance gave to me." One of the Illuminating Soul Realm practitioners picked up the invitation letter. He thought that it was a bluff that Zen was trying to play. He was smirking as he opened the letter. But when he read the name of Lassiter, his attitude immediately changed and the smirk on his face was wiped away instantly. Lassiter was an ordinary steward at the headquarters of the Alliance, but he was the top at the branch. He had that reputation at the branch, and everyone knew who Lassiter was. So, it was just customary that these 2 practitioners guarding the gate became curious as to why Lassiter would have given an invitation letter to a nature creature. Despite being Illuminating Soul Realm masters, they could only become the doormen of the Branch Alliance. That meant that even at their level, they still didn't deserve a high-ranking position. So, it was a bit odd for a mere nature creature to be greeted and welcomed by the Alliance. Is he related to Lassiter? Does he come here for a job? They wondered. While they were in a dilemma, a burst of loud laughter roared from behind them. When they turned to see, an old man appeared from the gate and walked towards Zen with a smile. He greeted Zen politely, "You must be Zen. Welcome, my little friend. I apologize for being late. I hope you can forgive me." Their jaws dropped open in shock. They immediately bowed before the old man as a sign of respect. They could feel their breath becoming heavy and their hearts pumping harder. It was no other than the leader of the branch alliance named Michael Mo. What's going on? Is this guy some bigwig? Why is Michael greeting him in person? The two illuminating soul realm practitioners were so stunned that sweat started to show on their face. They could feel the mighty presence of Michael. They almost believed that Zen was a big shot when they heard him say, "There must be a mistake. Could you please tell me who you are?" He doesn't know Michael, but why Michael is so polite to him? This young man, though they didn't like Zen's straightforwardness towards Michael, they were worried that Zen would speak ill about them to Michael. Given the arrogance they had shown him earlier, it was highly possible. This could be the end for them. "My name is Michael Mo. Zen, may I invite you to come in? Let's discuss in detail over some tea," Michael said with a smile. The tone in Michael's voice felt like he was talking to his senior. Zen politely nodded. As he was about to follow Michael, he glanced at the two illuminating soul realm practitioners indifferently. The two practitioners were relieved. The look on Zen's face appeared to them as calm. If he wasn't that annoyed, they guessed that he wouldn't rat them out in front of Michael. As Michael's and Zen's figures eventually faded from afar, they started to wonder as to who Zen really was. Chapter 415, Western Region. Zen entered the building with Michael Mo, trailing behind him. Once he was inside, it dawned on him how completely different the inside was from the outside. The branch of the World Commercial Alliance was luxuriously decorated. There wasn't a single area that looked ordinary inside. This place is exquisite, Zen thought, feeling impressed. The World Commercial Alliance was a commercial organization and had survived for many years. In spite of its current prosperity, it was believed that it might decline one day. Thus, it clearly had to keep a low profile if it wished to do high-profile jobs. For the World Commercial Alliance, Zen was an important guest, so Michael welcomed him in person. To be sure, such a warm welcome was given to Zen because they learned about his identity. Earlier, Lassiter had submitted a portfolio containing all 7 rune works of Zen. The prolific works left everyone, including those people from the headquarters of the World Commercial Alliance, shocked. All members of this alliance were well aware about the value of a runic expert who was excellent at perfect brushwork. Therefore, the World Commercial Alliance had decided to ingratiate Zen at all costs. Although Zen was a member of Cloud Hall, the World Commercial Alliance generally didn't get itself involved in the struggles among sects. Since Zen was a runic expert, it was concluded that there would be a lot of room for cooperation with this guy. After Zen took a seat, Michael clapped his hands. In a blink of an eye, 2 beautiful maids appeared and served them tea. The tea brought a wonderful fragrance to the atmosphere. "Zen, do you come here to purchase materials or to sell runes?" Michael asked, without wasting any time. He wanted to get to the gist of the matter. "I do sell runes, but my visit here is mainly made to buy certain materials and some news," Zen replied curtly. Michael nodded, taking out a square nameplate. The entire nameplate was inlaid with gold and jade. In the center of the nameplate, Zen Luo was inscribed. The nameplate looked really exquisite. "Zen, our sub-alliance has exclusively made this nameplate for you. With this nameplate, you are entitled to get discounts from the branch of the World Commercial Alliance located in any area. You are now considered as our most respectful customer. In addition, we can sell our materials to you at a 20% discount. Moreover, we intend to buy your runes at a price a little higher than the market price." Michael stated in a professional manner. Zen reached for that exquisite nameplate as a smile crept on his face. People of the World Commercial Alliance are really astute. They apparently have made this nameplate for quite a long period. People here seem to be really generous. They have offered me such a privilege without imposing any condition, he thought. People of the World Commercial Alliance were not fools and everyone knew that. Moreover, no merchant would sell hens on a rainy day. It was beyond doubt that they expected something in return from Zen. However, Zen couldn't help but feel impressed with their conducts which were so pleasing. It is always a pleasure to deal with clever people. Besides, I am really on the lookout for a channel to sell divine textures. Undoubtedly, the World Commercial Alliance is the best option for me, Zen thought excitedly. He was unable to conceal his gratification. Soon afterwards, Zen handed several of his divine textures to Michael. These are 1-star runes, but they are as effective as ordinary 2-star runes once they are triggered. Zen explained. Michael took the runes from Zen. As he analyzed different roots of the runes, he unconsciously nodded his head in approval. As soon as Michael saw Zen's mediation runes the first time, he figured that they belonged to a different school from the ordinary ones. These runes followed totally different routes which couldn't be drawn without professional help no matter how gifted he was. Now Michael had verified what he thought was true. Yet, what he didn't know was that the runes that Zen had drawn were actually divine textures. Michael casually released his life vitality and lit up the textures. At the sight of bold and perfect strokes on the textures, his face beamed with a bright smile. Judging from the novel roots and perfect brushwork, Michael concluded that he could sell the textures at a good price. Thus, he handed the textures over to the servants beside him and asked them to have the textures evaluated. In actuality, Michael had no interest in 1-star or 2-star runes. But he was hopeful that Zen would be capable of drawing 4-star, 5-star and even 6-star runes as he grew up. This is going to be awesome, Michael thought with his heart brimming with pleasure. Zen, apart from selling runes, do you need to buy any materials? Michael questioned casually. He was very confident that he could get all materials within the central region. In consideration of Zen's current cultivation, he assumed that the materials Zen required wouldn't be beyond his reach. Hence, Michael was demon-bent on helping Zen get the materials that would be handy for him. Upon Michael's questioning, Zen nodded and responded, I want to buy 2 bottles of celestial soul liquid, a purple thunder bamboo plant which has survived for more than 5,000 years, a withered ginseng plant which has survived for 1,000 years, and... Michael gaped at Zen anxiously as he heard his requests. All these materials mentioned by Zen were top-grade materials. Both the celestial soul liquid and the purple thunder bamboo were known as rare treasures, which were occasionally seen over several years or perhaps even decades. Most of the time, the World Commercial Alliance would sell these materials as soon as they got hold of them. There was always a huge demand for them. In the central region, the elderly people especially dreamed of owning these materials. Zen, our commercial alliance would be more than willing to sell these materials to you if they had been available. However, they are too precious and rarely seen. It takes over a decade to get a glimpse of them. Hence, I can only assure you that I will inform you as soon as I get any news about these materials, Michael explained with a rueful smile. Zen nodded without any tinge of suspicion. In truth, he had already known that these things were too rare to be collected so easily. Hence, he had come to the alliance for the major purpose of getting some news. Before Zen could speak, Michael added, recently, someone reported a piece of news about purple thunder bamboo to us. What's the price for the news? Asked Zen curiously. Michael smiled and replied, Zen, the news is not a secret, so it is of no great value. To celebrate having a friend like you, I will privately offer you the news as a gift. As soon as Michael finished, he burned a message rune. A short while later, someone came with a map. Michael reached for the map and then handed it over to Zen while saying, but Zen, I don't suggest that you look for the purple thunder bamboo by yourself. A good many warriors would do anything to get these rare treasures. But the task was not as easy as it seemed. Moon Mountain was the place where the precious treasures were kept. And it happened to be an unsafe and dangerous place. In Michael's eyes, Zen was skilled at perfect brushwork and incomparably gifted in drawing runes. But in terms of strength, Zen had only reached the nature level, so his cultivation achievement was far from enough for going to the mountain. Getting the rare treasures is not something he can do, Michael thought and shook his head. However, he had no say in it. It was up to Zen if he would go or not. But Michael thought it was his responsibility to warn him. Naturally, it was impossible for him to stop Zen. Once Zen left, Michael's face contorted with a frown. Are elders of Cloud Hall so silly? They permitted Zen to freely stroll outside the Cloud Hall as he wished. Other sects would rear Zen like legendary beasts if they found that Zen was such an excellent runic expert. They would be in constant fear that some mishap would happen to him. Hence, Michael was a little puzzled to realize that Cloud Hall let Zen live the life as he pleased. Then 1 month had passed. All areas which were 5,000 miles away from Cloudy City in the southwest and outside the West Mountain Pass were categorized as Western Region, where local customs and practices differed from those in the Central Region. Zen was dashing along the official road to Western Region. It was not because he enjoyed walking there on foot. Instead, he was compelled to do it. His flying chariot brutally crashed half a month ago. And in the Western Region, it was extremely difficult to buy a galloping horse. Thus, he had no choice but to tire himself by walking on foot. He sprinted all the way towards the west, feeling all his energy getting drained out of his body. The Western Region was a vast territory with sparse population. In general, no one was seen over hundreds of miles. Now, a small town came into Zen's view. Beside the road, a small plaque was set up. On that plaque, Everest town could be seen. As soon as Zen arrived at this town, he rushed into a tavern. A waiter of the tavern, wearing a braid, came over to Zen. He behaved cordially and spoke with a rather strong accent. "Sir, this way please." Feeling a little out of breath, Zen nodded and followed the waiter's lead upstairs. As soon as he reached the second floor, he felt something was amiss. To begin with, there were very few guests. And when he made his way, he found all waiters and the manager were looking in his direction. He felt that they had malicious intentions. Why are they glancing in my direction? What do they want? He wondered, feeling bewildered. However, once he sat down, his thoughts went back to food. His stomach was growling with hunger. The waiter with the braid came over to Zen with a menu. In the most friendly tone, he asked, "Sir, these are special dishes at our tavern. Would you like to have some?" Zen swiftly scanned through the menu. Placing the menu back, he nodded and said, "Yes, go ahead and serve me all special dishes." Traveling outside, Zen was open to experimenting different tastes. He was never hypercritical about wine, meat or food. The waiter shortly replied, looked back and made a gesture to the manager. Afterwards, the waiters exchanged glances with each other. They seemed to be communicating with each other using their eyes. However, Zen sat calmly, not bothering to ask what the matter was. But in the pit of his stomach, he had a bad feeling. He assumed that his meal was going to be a disappointing one. Chapter 416, Got a Pig. Food never looked so good. The smell of onions and garlic filled up the tavern. Juice was oozing out of the tender meat as Zen sliced through it. He ate like he had not eaten in days. It was just too homely. Zen immediately grabbed another serving of the tavern's special. Everyone in the tavern looked at him intently. Cunning smiles crossed the faces of the several servers standing beside him. They looked at him with desire, like Zen was a prey ready to be killed and eaten at any moment. Having been to the Killing Sword Mountain, Zen couldn't be more sensitive to the paranoia and the killing aura, like when some people were ready to kill him. Nevertheless, he devoured his meal since his hunger was more important than being threatened. How could he not see through the threat by the several men? The meal was so delicious, too delicious in fact. No threat could make him stop from eating since he was too hungry to even think about all those men. They dissolved into the background. The fighting could wait. Food was more important. He went with the eating as he grabbed more and more servings of the delicious meal in front of him. Zen gorged on the food. With the clock ticking and Zen finishing one dish after another, the smiles on the several men faded away gradually and instead, were replaced by confused expressions. Soon, Zen gobbled all the dishes on the table. Then he turned his head to the servers and grinned, with some meat sticking out of his teeth. "What's with the look?" The several men who wore their hair in plaits were embarrassed. They lowered their heads, trying to hide their scrunched-up faces. "No, nothing," they faltered. "Were you thinking why the poison in the food didn't work on me?" Zen asked smugly. Hearing Zen's blunt question, the several men's face turned pale. The manager who stood not far away suddenly sneered and ordered, "Action!" The several men around all drew out a small mechanical device from their waists. The end of the mechanical device was connected to a dark gold rope. Not thinking twice, they immediately shot their devices at Zen. With swishing and whooping sounds, 7 or 8 dark gold ropes came directly at Zen's head. Almost in the blink of an eye, Zen was bound by the ropes. From their skillful moves and flawless cooperation between each other, Zen could see that it was not their first time to do the trick. It was flawless, like they had done it multiple times to different victims. It seemed not just one prey had been caught. A skillful warrior as Zen was, he had all the time to dodge the ropes, but he did not budge this time. Instead, he let nature take its course and was bound by the ropes that locked him into place. The manager smiled smugly and walked to Zen's side with a gloating look. "It did come as a surprise that the poison wasn't working on you. Yet, having known that your food is poisoned, you did not do anything. The joke is on you, lad. You didn't know that the ropes have special structures that can stop your life vitality from working. Haha, good job, everyone, we got another pig today. Take him to the back." Hearing the manager's words, Zen didn't panic. He stood there, bound, having a resting face, and with no emotion whatsoever. His eyes were blank, and no words came out of his mouth. He only thought of one thing, If he was only a common nature creature who got tied up by these special ropes and his life vitality rendered useless, he might have really been in trouble. However, Zen had a strong muscular body. All the training and fighting made this scenario a tad bit easy for him to escape. Although firmly locked up by the ropes, it was still very easy for him to break free. Piece of cake. Got a pig? What do you want from me? Zen asked curiously. There was still no trace of panic on his face. Rather, he was very composed even he was trapped. The nonchalance Zen was giving off annoyed the manager so much. Every warrior he caught as his pig lost their head in such situation. But why was the guy in front him still so calm? The manager sneered and said, "You are going to die anyway, so stop wasting your breath." Annoyed and feeling confused, he ordered his men, "Take him off." Following the manager's command, several men carried their pig towards the backyard of the tavern. As soon as they landed on the backyard, Zen noticed something. He was not the only one, not the only pig. To Zen's surprise, 20-odd other warriors were locked up at the place, too. The people in the western region looked different as they all had sunken eyes, and the clothes they wore differed from that of people in central region. Zen immediately thought that those victims were warriors, more like nature creatures from the central region. He also noticed that one illuminating soul realm cultivator was among them. The dark gold ropes that bound him were doubled compared to ropes used on other warriors. With a heavy thud, Zen was thrown to the ground. The several men left the backyard immediately, not even bothered by the possibility that Zen could escape. As soon as Zen struggled to stand on his feet, he heard one of the warriors mutter, "Alas, here comes another pig." Zen slightly frowned and asked, "What do you mean?" The manager said something about a pig. Were they taking men as pigs? What is all this? Zen wondered. "Hey, man, which sect are you from?" The warrior smiled and asked with contempt. Zen blinked his eyes, trying to look all right and replied, "Cloud Hall." Hearing where Zen came from gave the other warriors a sense of disbelief. The central region housed several sects including what they called the second-grade sects. There were hundreds of them in the central region, and even much more for the third-grade sects. But for the fourth-grade sect, however, there were only a few. And the Cloud Hall, however, ranked the top in the fourth-grade sects. The Cloud Hall enjoyed a very high reputation among the hundreds of millions of warriors in the central region. It was like the Cloud sect of Eastern region. The other warriors in the backyard could not help but let out a little laugh despite being held captive. This guy is clearly lying, a warrior thought. The disciples who were able to enter the Cloud Hall were elites strictly selected from tens of millions of warriors. And that nature creature guy claimed that he was from the Cloud Hall. That was totally nonsense. There must be some kind of a mistake. Zen noticed both the mockery and disbelief in their faces. But he didn't care. Believe it or not, he was just being himself, just answering truthfully to a question being asked to him. He continued, "You haven't told me what it means by calling us pigs yet." "That's to say we are just like pigs that will be the lunch for the beasts." "Now, could you just shut it?" the warrior said impatiently. Other warriors who heard this all showed a downcast look. Knowing that they were going to die shortly after, who had the mood to explain anything to Zen? They would all die anyway. Why even bother? Zen believed in his skill. He knew he would be able to save all of them if he did try. He was going for a long shot. "Explain to me, and I can save you," Zen said lightly. The warrior snorted and laughed, his head tilted to one side. You are only at the 4th grade of nature level. Your cultivation base is even lower than me, and you can save me. Haha, a pig and a clown wrapped into one package. What an entertainment system, spoke the warrior at the 7th grade of nature level who looked down upon Zen. Everyone thought of Zen as a joke, an obnoxious man at the 4th grade of nature level. Who was he kidding? They were all doomed. At least, that was all in each and every one of the pigs' minds. This gangster tavern was set up to catch nature creatures. The ropes that tied them up were mixed with heptal gold threads, and structures which could suppress their life vitality. If the life vitality of a warrior was suppressed, he had no way to get rid of it. All the other pigs then realized that there was even an illuminating soul realm cultivator who was also trapped there. As soon as the warrior stopped his laughing from all his mockery, he heard a cracking sound. "What was that?" asked the warrior. His eyes widened and his jaw dropped at the sight of one of the gold ropes broken by Zen. How did he do it? Firm as rocks those special ropes were, they were not able to resist Zen's force supported by dragon scales. Zen summoned the force of 100 dragon scales. Inch by inch his body glowed, including his eyes. He lifted his hands and split them apart. There was a loud noise. He successfully destroyed one rope. Several warriors who had seen the scene were dumbstruck. The strength of this guy's corporal body was so terrifying. How could he possibly do that? Was he all that powerful? All the warriors were in awe, their faces paled. All of them were in shock. They started to think that Zen was no ordinary nature creature. What could he be hiding? What strength could he possibly possess? He broke the rope without using his life vitality, and that was beyond his supposed skill and strength. Still in disbelief after seeing what Zen did, they knew that they had a chance at escaping the prison tavern that they were in. This situation gave them a silver lining, a chance to live. They also knew they should keep quiet about this, as they might be watched by someone else, a guard who could easily tear the escape. They all turned to Zen and said in a soft voice, "Help us untie the rope." Zen said slowly, "You should tell me first what is going on and what exactly the pig thing is." At this time, several warriors scrambled to answer his question. One voice on top of the other, it was getting out of hand. One of the warriors said, "Have you heard about the news that purple thunder bamboos appeared in Moon Mountain?" Yes. Zen nodded. This was also the reason why he came here. The Moon Mountain is extremely dangerous with numerous horrible beasts lurking inside. In order to get the purple thunder bamboos, some warriors hired local men to catch someone like us, and then they would use us as pathfinders, like a scent trail, if you think about it. If we meet some strong beasts, we will become their food. Just like pigs, the warrior said with gloomy face. The Moon Mountain was the home of the purple thunder bamboos. Their growth required a special environment, making the mountain the perfect place of them to thrive. The purple thunder bamboos grew underground for years or even decades. They grew slowly when they were underground. Even they had hid underground for decades, they only grew by several inches. But once they broke the soil, they could grow to several meters or even over 10 meters within a couple of weeks. Some purple thunder bamboos might hide underground for hundreds of years or thousands of years, like a flower taking its time to bloom. Once they broke through the soil, they could easily grow to several dozens meters in a short amount of time. After thousands of years of hiding, Mother Nature would welcome their birth with an abnormal phenomenon, thunder, lightning and heavy rain to glorify their presence. It was, after all, a mother's instinct to give such an elaborate and beautiful ceremony to open the doors to a beautiful creature. To the warriors, it wasn't necessary for them to get those 1,000-year-old purple thunder bamboos. They would be very happy if they were able to obtain the younger ones which had lived for decades. The ancient bamboos were too difficult to get. Any warrior who could get that would be lauded. Despite the dangerous path that the Moon Mountain had for its visitors, there were still many warriors who wandered at the foot of the mountain, hoping to get the purple thunder bamboos. Several days ago, people saw a purple lightning flash through the sky in the shape of a dragon. It was so bright that it had lit up almost half of the sky. The gossip flew around the town like the morning breeze. Thus, this gave many warriors an idea. They predicted that a purple thunder bamboo might have emerged and that it might be at least 1,000 years old. The lightning was enormous, bearing the idea of what kind of bamboo might have grown in the mountain. And judging from its size, the bamboo was most likely to have lived over 10,000 years. Taking advantage of the news that flew around town, evil minds met and came up with such a destructive idea, catching warriors and sending them out to the woods as a bait for ferocious beasts to chew on, like pigs. It turned out to be such a story. Zen then understood what they were all there for, in the backyard of the gangster tavern. Some people were just willing to be so vicious to use such unscrupulous ways to gain advantage over other people, even if it meant to put innocent people's lives on the line. Zen shook his head, stretched his arms forward, and enabled the dragon scales force once more. Snap, 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 each of the ropes around Zen's body were cut and fell to the ground. That hurt a bit, exclaimed Zen while feeling his reddish wrists. He stood up, held the knife that popped out of his pocket, and sent it flying across the whole backyard, untying every single one of the golden ropes that tied the other warriors. Within seconds, the ropes on the 20-odd warriors were all untied. Many ropes were cut, thus making sounds everywhere. The sounds became a loud noise that alerted the men in the tavern. One man shouted, "The warriors in the backyard are running away." Running away? That's impossible. The only illuminating soul realm cultivator present sneered and was truly furious. He closed his eyes. Life vitality surged out from his body and materialized into sharp swords that charged at the direction of the tavern. With his command, all the other nature creatures all started to attack. Life vitalities were exuded from restless bodies. Several knives were thrown. A flying knife was dodged by Zen an inch close to his face. Others relied on their body strength and threw blows at the nasty gangsters. 1, 2, punch, 3, kick, 4, dodge, all the warriors wanted to escape. All they had to do was immobilize these good-for-nothing tricksters. All the men in the tavern were no match for these angry prisoners. They fought in numbers. They might be only at the nature level, but they fought as a group and this only made them stronger and invincible. The gangsters, dirty tricks didn't do them good this time around. The gangsters were caught off guard for they did not expect that the poison would not work on Zen. More strangely, Zen was not affected by the dark gold rope's ability to suppress life vitality. What was going on with Zen? Who was he? With a rumbling sound, the warriors reached out their arms. They joined hands and struck the whole tavern down to the ground. Dang, I got trapped and controlled by these craps. Really, you call these gangsters fighters? Said one warrior smugly as he rubbed off some dirt from his shirt. What a shame. That's too little damage for revenge. Kill them. How dare a group of martial art practitioners use such dirty tricks? Up in the sky, several men appeared in midair. One of them exclaimed, Why were these pigs able to run away? Myron, is this how well your useless men are doing? Another man in the midair gave out a confident smile and snorted, Don't worry, none of them will be going anywhere. Hearing other voices aside from theirs made the warriors wonder who else might be with them. All the warriors in the backyard raised their heads and looked up to the sky. What they saw turned their faces pale. In midair stood 3 internal elixir realm masters. All of them were frozen at the sight of the masters in midair. Quick on his feet, the illuminating soul realm cultivator came to his senses and shouted, Everyone, run. As soon as he was finished, he leapt into the air, not looking back at how others were doing. It was an escape after all, and everyone was out for themselves. He and everyone else tried to get out of there as soon as possible. But the moment he took the leap, one of the internal elixir realm masters raised his hand and waved. A huge palm appeared in the air. The palm slapped the illuminating soul realm cultivator. He froze. Time stood still. In midair, his arms spread wide, and his legs were dangling. This was his end. The force rammed him so hard that it radiated throughout the whole tavern. With a deafening sound, the illuminating soul realm cultivator was hard as rock. With one swish of the wind, he was smashed to pieces. His body turned into pink mist. He was literally blown off, piece per piece, with every organ shredded into bits and pieces along with his own blood splattered around everyone's faces. And just like that, the illuminating soul realm cultivator was no more than dust. Blood was everywhere, and everyone was covered with the illuminating soul realm cultivator's remains. Witnessing the scene, all the nature creatures, including Zen, stood there, stupefied. Chapter 417, The Golden Opportunity. In the presence of the 3 masters of internal elixir realm, no one dared to move. It was as if everyone's body had been frozen. Anyone who dared to offend the masters would suffer the same fate as the illuminating soul realm practitioner. That man was punched so hard that his whole body appeared to have been crushed. Even Zen, who was always ready to risk his life, had not moved. From his assessment, he had a slim chance of successfully escaping from the power of the 3 masters. It was a chance he wasn't willing to take yet. He remained quiet but unsettled. He could sense that something terrible was about to happen. If you move, you'll die. One of the masters of internal elixir realm said nonchalantly. His creepy eyes looked around. There was no option but to heed the order of these masters. Everyone remained quiet and still. After quite some time, more than 1,000 practitioners appeared on the town road. Most of them were on the nature level. It appeared that they were all tied with ropes with no chance of escaping. They had caught so many people this time. It wasn't just a small number, but an alarming number of captives. At this rate, they could wind up all the nature-level practitioners in no time. Did they intend to go to the Moon Mountain to get the purple thunder bamboo? The troop of captives was being guarded by some practitioners who was walking along the 2 sides of the road. These practitioners suddenly tossed dark yellow ropes at Zen and all his fellows. Zen and his fellows could not dare to defy the 3 masters of internal elixir. So, against their will, they heeded the orders from the guards. They were also tied by the ropes and then joined the rest of the captives. As he made his way to join the captives, Zen's mind got clouded with thoughts. He was confused as to why they caught many practitioners. Zen knew that acquiring the purple thunder bamboo was quite a challenging task. And the purpose of capturing practitioners was to use them as guinea pigs. Their captors would force them to acquire the purple thunder bamboo on their behalf. But it would entail the risk of losing their lives. However, for their captors, it would give them the hints on how to successfully acquire the bamboos. But the number of captured practitioners here was too high. As Zen estimated, it was beyond what was needed. So, what on earth were they planning to do? In the middle of his deep thoughts, Zen was interrupted by a sudden noise. A young man in purple, about 29 years old, approached their flock. He appeared to be also a master of internal elixir, but on a higher level than the other three. As the newly arrived master of the internal elixir joined them, the three other masters of the internal elixir saluted and greeted, "Young master." The young man in purple acknowledged their salutations, and directly asked, "Are they enough?" "Sir, we have captured a total of 1,036 people." One of the masters confidently answered. "Great, you've done a great job in finding so many people in such a short time. I will sure to reward your good work and loyalty once we get back to the sect." The young man praised the three masters. He was smiling as he looked at the flock of captives. "It's our honor," one of the masters of internal elixir realm replied with great joy. The other two of the masters of internal elixir moved to command the captives. The captured practitioners were treated like pigs. They had been pushed around and bullied by the masters. They were even asked to walk forward in a straight line. Meanwhile, Zen took it as an opportunity to concentrate. Though he was held captive, he tried to recalculate his chances of successfully escaping. There are now 4 masters of internal elixir. 2 of them are on the primary level, and 1 is on the intermediate level, but their leader is on the senior level. Dang it, I should have done it earlier when there was only 3 masters of internal elixir. And what's with so many captives? It doesn't matter now. No matter what they will do, I have a feeling that it's not going to be pleasant. So, I must escape. But how? Zen had thought harder. The dark yellow rope tied to him was not the problem. In fact, he could easily get away from it. However, after he got away from the rope, he would have to face the wrath of the internal elixir masters. One wrong move could be the end of him. Zen's power was nowhere near the masters of internal elixir. One snap, his body could be crashed. He had to rethink his options. There was no use in escaping if he was already dead. Or could death be his only escape? In Zen's estimate, the troop could be made up of more than 1,000 people tied together, which restricted their moves and made them advance slowly. After walking for nearly half a day in the almost endless road, a dark mountain finally came into view. The mountain that resembled a huge elephant was called the Moon Mountain. The breathtaking view almost made Zen forget that he was held captive. Upon arriving at the foot of Moon Mountain, the young man in purple took out a jade pendant that looked like a small dragon. He held it up and shook it. The jade pendant seemed to tell which way they should go. Zen looked at the dragon jade pendant. It looked familiar, but he couldn't tell where he had seen it. Suddenly, he felt a quiver in his head. "Hey, what's the matter?" Zen was taken by surprise by the quiver in his head and thought that it came from the cyan dragon. He concentrated his mind on the cyan dragon and asked him, "What's wrong?" A moment later, Zen could hear the cyan dragon laughing in his mind. Zen got a little annoyed by the insensitive gesture of the cyan dragon at this time. He scolded, "What's wrong with you? Can't you see that I'm in great trouble right now? Does that make you happy?" He was a little irritated now because he couldn't think of a way to escape. He felt hopeless with his situation, and the cyan dragon's insensitive remark was not helping him at all. "What do you mean you're in great trouble? I don't think so. From how I see it, this can be your golden opportunity," the cyan dragon said calmly. Golden opportunity? Zen was more confused than he was earlier. He couldn't see the golden opportunity that the cyan dragon was referring to. And even if there was, he couldn't comprehend how he could make use of that opportunity in the presence of 4 masters of internal elixir realm. Zen was still annoyed at the blabbering cyan dragon. He said, "I don't have time for mind games. Can you be more specific?" Though the cyan dragon could be irritating at times, Zen knew that he had a broader horizon at the world. It was one thing that Zen admired from the cyan dragon. Everything that Zen valued the most was nothing in the eyes of the cyan dragon. This included the perfect brushwork, the consummate sword intent, and all the treasures that Zen acquired through a great deal of effort. So, if the cyan dragon said that it was his golden opportunity, then Zen could not argue with that. "As I said, this is your golden opportunity. But of course, you will need my help. Don't think of running away. Just bear with it a little longer." If he can really find that place, with my help, you can reach the level of illuminating soul realm instantly. The Cyan Dragon said. After a pause, he continued, I think I know what he is looking for. Reach the level of illuminating soul realm. Zen got lost upon hearing these words. He didn't seem to have heard what the Cyan Dragon was saying. He was now more curious about what could happen and the purpose of the young man in purple for leading all of them to the Moon Mountain. Zen originally thought that they would be used as baits in the Moon Mountain. But contrary to what he initially believed would happen, 2 of the masters of internal elixir realm looked for the way themselves and killed all the beasts they encountered so all their captives wouldn't be hurt. The beasts in Moon Mountain could be cruel and strong, but the power of the masters of internal elixir realm was far greater. Hence, killing beasts was a piece of cake. The young man in purple would occasionally take out the dragon jade pendant to determine the way they needed to go. Afterward, he would ask the troop to follow him. But as they moved farther, it became clear that their destination wasn't the top of the Moon Mountain. They were being led to somewhere else. Hey, Cyan Dragon, do you know where he's taking us? Please tell me, Zen asked the Cyan Dragon again. He was growing more impatient since all his calculations were wrong from the start. If the Cyan Dragon hadn't appeared, he would have decided to escape and wouldn't know what the man in purple was up to. But the Cyan Dragon didn't say a word. He just smiled and then added, you'll know once we get there. If you can make it there alive, I will help you reach the level of illuminating soul realm. And there can be more benefits that you can ever imagine. Zen sensed that the Cyan Dragon wouldn't give him more details even if he asked. So, to save him from getting more annoyed, Zen stopped asking. But he knew that the Cyan Dragon and the other things inside his body wouldn't surely do something harmful to him. Another half an hour of walking had passed. As they were all taking the twisty mountain road, a sunken mountain creek suddenly emerged with a fancy tower magically glittering in the middle of it. The tower was about 100 feet high, full of strange lights, with a huge monster sitting on top of it. There was no mistaking, and it was a winged dragon. The winged dragon with an embossed forehead twined on the tower. Its sharp teeth were showing as it waved its claws. I found you at last. You may look like a purple thunder bamboo from the sky, but you aren't. You are Dragon Sorarina. Now, I will have all my dreams come true. Ha ha ha. The young man in purple laughed crazily. His eyes were glistering in a strange way. The 3 masters of internal elixir were happy to have reached the conclusion of their journey and tried to flatter their lord. Congratulations. My lord, you finally found the Dragon Sorarina. Upon hearing the young man's laughter, the winged dragon stretched its neck and roared at the troop. Roar! It was so loud that all the practitioners of nature level were frightened. In fear, they all knelt down and covered their heads with their arms. Go and take everyone there. It's time to feed the dragon, the young man in purple said as he waved his hand. He seemed to be delighted at the sight of the Dragon Sorarina. The practitioners guarding the troop started driving the troop by waving their whips. They yelled at the captured practitioners, however, no one moved. Even Zen didn't dare to take a step. In the minds of each captured practitioner, they would eventually die no matter what they chose. But they wouldn't willingly obey the last order and be eaten by that dragon. Some of the captured practitioners were enraged and started cursing, "You're all cowards. You won't make us kill ourselves. I would rather die here than be eaten by that monster. I would rather die than help you in your purpose." Upon hearing the commotion, the 2 masters on the primary level of internal elixir rushed to the troop. They caught several practitioners and forcefully threw them into the mountain creek. The practitioners rolled down the creek like rocks, but before even hitting the ground, they were bitten and swallowed by the winged dragon. It happened so fast that those eaten didn't have the chance to scream for their lives. The unfortunate fate that those practitioners met had frightened the rest. They initially thought the winged dragon wouldn't eat people, but upon seeing it with their own eyes, they became helpless. The captured practitioners of nature level were thrown to the mountain creek one by one. The rest could not do anything but wait for their own fate. The 2 masters on the primary level of internal elixir kept on throwing the practitioners into the creek, while the ferocious winged dragon ate them all without any hesitation. Now, there were only 8 practitioners that stood in front of Zen. It would eventually be his turn. He grew anxious and could not think straight. Finally, he asked the Cyan Dragon, "Now, tell me what to do. I believe you won't let me be eaten by that dragon." Chapter 418, From Under the Ice. From here you jump, and head to the Dragon Sorarina gates as fast as possible. I'll handle the rest, the Cyan Dragon commanded, smoothly. A feeling of relief washed over Zen. Till now, the cyan dragon hadn't done anything that served no purpose. Since the dragon seemed to know exactly what to do here, Zen decided to do as suggested. One after another, he watched the nature-level warriors as they were tossed from the mountain. Then it was Zen's turn. The two warriors at the internal elixir realm took hold of Zen's limbs and hurled him at the mountain stream, where the winged dragon waited. As Zen dropped from the slope, he watched the winged dragon gobbling up the other warriors that landed before him. It finished them as Zen fell, and turned its attention to Zen. Suddenly, the winged dragon craned its neck and snapped at Zen. "Now, cyan dragon!" screamed Zen in his mind as he wrestled free of his bonds. He realized he was outmatched, and would have to rely solely on the cyan dragon to escape with his life. "Huh," uttered the young man in purple thoughtfully with a trace of surprise as he watched Zen break free. His surprise changed quickly, and a wicked grin spread across his face because he felt Zen's struggles were in vain. Whatever Zen did, there was no escaping the winged dragon. Unknown to the young master watching, just as the winged dragon's jaws snapped shut over Zen, within Zen's mind, the cyan dragon sounded a mighty roar. "Roar!" echoed the roar through the mountain stream. The reverberating roar filled the ferocious winged dragon with fear, and its head shot back. The winged dragon huddled in a ball in the dragon soar arena, with wide eyes filled with uncertainty and alarm. Its fear to the dragon roar was reasonable, for winged dragons had evolved from flood dragons, who were born with an innate fear of true dragons, whereas the latter were naturally powerful, legendary beasts, if not the most frightening of all. Jaws dropped as the master warriors watched. Shock etched in the face of the young master as he stepped forward. Considering the winged dragon was beyond his capabilities, he didn't dare get any closer than that. How did he manage to create a dragon roar that powerful? Does he have a secret weapon that I'm not aware of? Mumbled the young master quietly, as he studied Zen top to bottom as he sprinted. Suddenly he remembered something and his devious smile returned, giving his face an evil look as he muttered, "Well, even if he escapes the winged dragon's attack, he wouldn't be able to get into the dragon soar arena." As he clutched the jade dragon-shaped pendant tightly, the young master's expression darkened. The medallion he held was the most valuable treasure his clan had, passed from one generation to the next for as long as anyone could remember. It was the key to the dragon soar arena, and without it, the arena couldn't be opened. Kicking at the mountainside to attempt to slow himself, Zen dropped quickly. In a blink of an eye, he touched the ground and his feet sunk deeply into the soft earth. Immediately, he sprang up from the dirt and rushed at the dragon soar arena. He knew he couldn't lower his guard even though he'd intimidated the winged dragon with the cyan dragon's roar, because it would attack without hesitation once it realized the cyan dragon was merely a spirit. "The gates are locked," shouted Zen mentally as he rushed at the arena gates. "Have faith. Keep going," said the cyan dragon calmly. As soon as Zen got near the gate, the cyan dragon spirit reached out with his claw and touched the gates. Suddenly, the etched ring-shaped seal gleamed as it mimicked the dragon. There was a clicking sound and the gates sprung open. "Now, enter," ordered the cyan dragon loudly within Zen. Zen reacted instantly, jumping through the gateway. The gates slammed shut behind him. All the master warriors watching, including the young master, were dumbfounded, and their mouths dropped open. How on earth did he open the gates?" shrieked the puzzled young master. He couldn't fathom how Zen got in the arena without the jade pendant. He glanced down at his treasured jade pendant, and thought of how ironic the situation was. Originally, the plan was for him to wait until the winged dragon was full from devouring the warriors flung to it, and then take that opportunity to walk into the arena. How could anyone anticipate that one of the nature creatures could escape the winged dragon and enter the arena before him? They were supposed to be so much weaker and unable to escape with their lives. Indignant and disturbed, the young master ordered, "Hurry! Toss the rest of these idiots off the mountain." When the gates closed behind Zen, he was teleported to a strange place. He assumed he was still in the dragon soar arena, but there was a faint white glow in the spacious area surrounding him, and in the middle stood a spiral staircase. "Why's there a staircase here, cyan dragon? Is the arena a tower?" wondered Zen aloud, as he stood in front of the stairs on the first floor of a tower. The cyan dragon chuckled heartily, and stated, "Just climb the stairs, and you will find out. I wouldn't have told you to come in here if it wasn't to your advantage." Zen bit his lip, and the bullet. Now that he was there, he walked up to the second floor. Unlike the bare walls on the first floor, dragon reliefs adorned every wall of the second floor. The dragon-shaped patterns were lifelike, and as Zen stared at the images, they changed. In the next moment, Zen was standing atop a large piece of ice surface, looking down at his reflection in the shimmering glass-like ice. He nearly doubted his eyes, but everything felt so real. Are these reliefs magical? Am I experiencing an illusion? Asked Zen as his face scrunched into a scowl. Keep going. You need to reach the top floor. If you fail to, you will be rejected, and will never get to try again. Shouted the cyan dragon impatiently. He ignored Zen's question. He seemed to care a great deal about this, as he urged Zen to continue. Zen felt the urgency and kept silent as he obediently climbed higher. If he was rejected by the arena, he would be teleported out to where the winged dragon and the master warriors waited. If he were trapped by them, his fate would be worse than death. Just as Zen nodded in agreement, the ice beneath his feet shattered, exposing huge cracks, as if something huge was beating from under the ice. Soon, the lines expanded. Kra-acck. When the ice broke away, countless in number, 30 to 40-foot-tall creatures lunged up from the depths, snarling and bearing sharp tusks. He recognized that the monsters were ferocious polar beasts, which made Zen's heart race fearfully, but he regained himself quickly and remained still and silent as he quickly devised a plan. Moments after the enormous creatures emerged from under the ice growling at Zen sinisterly, they launched at him, attacking. Shish wish. The sound of Zen's blood-drinking sword as he unsheathed it mixed in with the snarling beast's howl. Zen poised for combat, facing the beasts fearlessly. Though the fierce beasts had nearly limitless power, they were somewhat slow to react. Targeting one beast, Zen took the chance. He jumped, lunging blood-drinking sword at the beast. Stab! Zen shouted as he prepared to use a basic swordsmanship move. Belatedly, the beast tried to escape. Searing pain ripped through the monster as the sword sliced into it, and it howled long and loud. Zen didn't stop, or give the wounded beast a thought as he easily slit its stomach wide open, and rushed toward the next victim. What? He wondered, noticing something weird suddenly. He had thought the polar beast would vanish, transforming into spots of sparkling light in the magic array when he killed it, but it didn't. The creature lay there, bleeding, and howling as it died slowly. Finally, it fell silent, in a pool of its blood on the ground. It can't be a magic array if the beast isn't disappearing. Is all this real? No, that isn't possible, thought Zen, with a look of surprise. At first, he thought he was trapped in a magic array, and that the beasts were illusions. But he quickly rejected that idea when he saw the bloody corpse. Where was he, then? Was he transported to some weird place? Wasn't he in the Dragon Soar arena? The cyan dragon heard his questions, and chortled before he replied, of course it isn't a magic array. It's far superior to any magic array. It's an array that was arranged with divine textures. Your mortal mind cannot comprehend it. All you have to do is climb to the top. After he finished explaining it to Zen, the cyan dragon's laughter reverberated through Zen's soul. Just then, something weird happened, again. A mass of malicious aura rose from the polar beast's corpse, and charged at Zen. A malicious aura was pure curse power that could only be generated by living creatures when they died holding a grudge. Seeing it appear, Zen was sure that the beasts were not shadows, but instead they were real. A small yellow light shot from the polar monster's body, too, and flew at Zen. Before he could react it plowed into his abdomen. What on earth? What's happening? Feeling the light as it merged with his energy, Zen had a look of doubt on his face. But there was no time to think. There more polar monsters were standing by Zen ready to pounce on him. Zen moved at full speed, weaving between the monsters. Whenever he could, he took a chance, and thrust his sword through another beast, slicing through as many as he could. In a flash, the corpses were piled like a mountain of red, wet ice. As the death toll increased, the malicious aura mass's count rose on the ice, and more spots of yellow lights shot into Zen's body. When the light points accumulated to a certain extent, Zen felt a feeling of fullness in his belly, precisely where his energy was stored. What is happening? Zen asked himself. Chapter 419, Lady Poison Blood. There was a feeling of fullness engulfed him, making him feel more animated. Briefly, he closed his eyes, savoring the entirety of the moment when he suddenly felt the surge of life vitality tightening in his belly. Unknown to the experience, panic coursed through him. Then it began spinning and spreading out wildly, extremely out of his control. This is, wow. The sense of trepidation quickly dissipated on Zen's face when it dawned on him what was going on. Realizing he finally broke through to the 5th grade of nature level, his face beamed with happiness. Is it because of the yellow spots? He wondered in awe while still relishing on the tingling sensation around his body. Hey, you get it, boy. The cyan dragon's voice rang in his mind at the inopportune moment, knocking him out of his serious musing. It's the lucky light of our genuine dragons. Let me tell you, it is very crucial in reinforcing your strength. It works wonders for martial artists with low cultivation levels, he explained to Zen, rolling his eyes loftily. Zen was fully aware of what he must concentrate on at present, and that was to promote his cultivation. Based on his assessment of himself, he was moving at a snail's pace. He believed that his progress was too slow. However, the reality was exactly the opposite of how he viewed his current capabilities. By all accounts, he was now improving at a decent rate in the Cloud Hall. Thinking that he still heard nothing of Yan, his dear sister, at this time, the intensity of his determination to get better doubled. He needed to focus and to hurry. How could he not? He was about to face the evil East Lord whose strength was mysteriously unfathomable to him. So putting first thing first, he braced himself to his most urgent task, which was to upgrade his cultivation and strength. Although he acquired a lot on Cloud Road, his cultivation did not improve much there. How amazing is the lucky light! When the guy in the later stage of internal elixir realm comes in, does it mean he is going to break through the internal elixir realm? Probed Zen. In dreams, the cyan dragon snorted coldly. The lucky light only works for refiners with cultivation below the internal elixir realm, but has no effect on refiners in the internal elixir realm. Bear in mind that the main reason is the dragon soar arena. It has just shown up after waiting for thousands of years to produce a large amount of the lucky light. Now that you've absorbed most of it, those who will come next will only receive a small amount. Each time the dragon soar arena was used, it would take some time to accumulate and generate new lucky light. This time almost all the lucky light was in Zen's hands. Even if the later martial artists passed through the second floor, he might only get a little of the lucky light. Zen, who was the first to arrive, was lucky enough to receive most of the lucky light at once. There was no doubt that Zen had a fascinating stroke of luck this time. This was why the cyan dragon insisted that he should not run away. I see, Zen stated as his face exuded inexplicable radiance. If he would gather all his attributes and climb all the way to the top of the Dragon Soar Arena, then he could possibly break into the illuminating soul realm in no time. In that case, the speed of his improvement would be totally unheard of in the world. It would be really incredible. As the life vitality in Zen's belly stopped spinning, the surroundings of the divine texture array slowly dissipated. So he passed through the second floor. Zen continued and strode over to the stairs leading to the third floor. He had just reached the stair when he heard the sound of the door opening and closing from below. Oh, no, somebody's coming in. Zen's face darkened all of a sudden. He guessed that the young master entered the Dragon Soar Arena after he had fed the winged dragon. Take your time, just climb at your own speed, said the cyan dragon in a calm voice. Zen trotted up the stair and responded, but I don't climb as fast as he does. It took Zen 5 minutes to slaughter the polar beasts, but it would only take a few dozen seconds for a refiner in the internal elixir realm to eradicate them. Then he would quickly catch up with Zen. Ha, 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 the divine texture array of the Dragon Soar Arena is developed based on the strength of the man climbing the Dragon Soar Arena. If he is in the later stage of internal elixir realm, the beasts he will encounter should be several times fiercer than you have encountered. So don't worry, he won't get to be faster than you. The cyan dragon chortled. Zen was reassured to learn how the array worked, but a new doubt flitted across his mind. Since the lucky light in the Dragon Soar Arena cannot promote his practice, why would he climb it? You'll know when you get to the top of the Dragon Soar Arena. Instead of explicitly answering the young man's question, the cyan dragon kept him in suspense. When Zen stepped into the third floor, the surroundings suddenly became hazy, abruptly obscuring his vision. After the scene whirled in a seemingly endless circle, he found himself in a thick forest. Sharpening his senses, he initially took a tentative step forward while letting his eyes scan the area closely. The place sent chills along his spine as he delved deeper. There, in the middle of the forest, a bunch of golden pythons were coiled up in trees. Noticing his presence, they glided down hissing venomously at him. Zen gave a smile and swung his blood-drinking sword toward those pythons. To him, these golden pythons were points of lucky light and traces of malicious aura. When he was fighting with these golden pythons, there was an accident occurring outside the Dragon Soar Arena. After having been fed, the winged dragon was lazily entrenched in the top of the tower and coldly stared at the 3 refiners in the internal elixir realm, not far away. The 3 refiners were waiting outside patiently after sending their young master into the tower. However, they got a little nervous facing the ferocious winged dragon, so the 3 of them distanced themselves. At this time, the bright Milky Way suddenly appeared above them, and almost lit up half the sky. The 3 refiners in the internal elixir realm looked up and saw a few horses running in the air and pulling a carriage towards them. The carriage left a myriad of glistening lights in the passing sky, as if it were driving on the Milky Way. At the sight of the carriage flying in the air, the 3 refiners went pale. "Oh, my goodness!" exclaimed one of the refiners. Someone else also found about the dragon soar arena. "The carriage, it's Lady Poison-Blood of the Bloodwood Cliff. What should we do? Lady Poison-Blood is coming. What can we do? We can do nothing about an old freak in the virtual tribulation realm. Fortunately, young master has gone in, or he may not be able to get any benefit from the dragon soar arena." In a few moments, the carriage had reached the top of the stream and stopped in midair. Then a woman of graceful bearing stepped out of the carriage. She looked exceedingly charming, and there was a coquettish look about her, making her look like a ripe apple. This woman was Lady Poison-Blood from the Bloodwood Cliff, an existence beyond refiners in the internal elixir realm, and one of the best in the central region. Lady Poison-Blood cast a casual glance at the dragon soar arena. "That's funny," she chuckled in a soft voice. "I thought the unusual sight in the western region couldn't be just because of the purple thunder bamboo. Looks like it's right for me to come here myself. The dragon soar arena has shown up." After soliloquizing, Lady Poison-Blood turned her eyes to the 3 refiners in the internal elixir realm. Then she crooked her finger towards the 3 and said, "You 3, come here." On hearing her words, the 3 refiners immediately felt profoundly scared. Although they were very reluctant to approach Lady Poison-Blood, they did not dare to resist her order. After all, the beautiful Lady Poison-Blood was actually a cold-blooded, ruthless woman. "Are you from the Shui family?" asked Lady Poison-Blood softly. "Yes, my lady," replied one of the refiners. The Shui family was a force of grade 3. Although grade 3 was next to grade 4, there was a striking difference between the forces of the 2 grades. Lady Poison-Blood nodded, and said with a smile, "It seems that the young master of your family has gone in. Am I right? I've long heard that the Shui family inherited the blood of the dragon. It turns out, the rumor is true. Our young master is indeed in the dragon soar arena," said another refiner. "Only our young master's dragon-shaped jade pendant can open the dragon soar arena, so the dragon soar arena belongs to our Shui." Before the refiner could finish his sentence, Lady Poison-Blood stretched out her hand, and with a gentle flip, a dragon-shaped jade pendant was in her hand. "Do you mean this kind of dragon-shaped jade pendant? I also have one," stated Lady Poison-Blood. "Looks like the dragon soar arena should belong to my Bloodwood Cliff." Then Lady Poison-Blood took a faint look at the winged dragon. Although it was a bit troublesome to deal with the dragon, it was not difficult for her to get rid of it. Lady Poison-Blood, the refiner, in the middle stage of the internal elixir realm, reluctantly called her name. But as Lady Poison-Blood only gave him a slight glance, he immediately shut up. In the world of martial arts, only a man of great strength could reason, people without strength were worthless. The dragon soar arena was a very useful treasure for both sects and families. It was because the lucky light was generated in the tower every once in a while, and was very helpful for their disciples, practicing. Although Zen came first and took away most of the lucky light this time, it would be produced again after a certain period of time. The winged dragon was prostrate on the dragon soar arena, its eyes fixed on Lady Poison-Blood. This was the first time it had felt threatened since it appeared with the dragon soar arena. However, while Lady Poison-Blood was thinking about how to obtain the dragon soar arena, croaks of crows rose suddenly from the air. There was a flock of crows, blotting out the sky and flying towards the dragon soar arena. At the sight of those crows, Lady Poison-Blood's face crumpled. "It's Raven, that old man always fights with me for treasures and makes trouble for me," she complained in a bleak voice. Chapter 420, A War for the Dragon Soar Arena. The crows were like black stains in the azure sky, flying too fast that they seemed like dark blurs. In a span of a few moments, they were already hovering above the mountain stream. Mocking laughter resounded through the valley, "Ha ha ha. Lady Poison-Blood, it seems that someone has got ahead of you." Above the group of crows was a man donning a black ghost mask. It was hard to tell how ancient the man was. As Lady Poisonblood called him an old man, he must have been around for ages. So what? Huh, I got here way before you did, so the Dragon Soar Arena belongs to me, alone. Lady Poisonblood remarked coldly. Raven grinned upon hearing this. Lady Poisonblood, you are still one of the top martial arts practitioners in the central region. Don't be so unreasonable. Oh, what if I am that unreasonable? Do you really think I'll be scared of you? Lady Poisonblood stated matter-of-factly. Hearing the feuding between these two powerful masters, the three internal elixir realm cultivators from the Shui clan sighed deeply. They feared that the Shui clan might not get their fair share of the Dragon Soar Arena this time around. They only hoped that their young master would have good fortune in exploring the Dragon Soar Arena. As Lady Poisonblood and Raven were in a heated exchange of insults and taunts, a roar resounded loud and clear from nearby. The intense roar rattled everyone present. A tremendous flood dragon appeared in the sky and swam towards them. A flood dragon. Lady Poisonblood's face darkened. No, I can't feel its life essence. This is merely a puppet. Raven said. No one could see his exact expression with the mask concealing his face. Having heard the roar of the flood dragon, the winged dragon guarding the Dragon Soar Arena roared back, the sound like the rumble of thunder. The winged dragon seemed to utilize the roar to further manifest its immense power. There were too many masters coming here today. Even a powerful creature such as the winged dragon also got nervous and felt threatened. When the flood dragon approached closer, they saw it open its mouth. 3 people were standing in the middle, with the incumbent leader of the Cloud Hall, Tia, front and center. Tia had been practicing in a secluded place for a whole month, and now the aura around her had changed substantially. It was apparent that she had already leapt to the internal elixir realm from the illuminating soul realm. Tia had dispersed her cultivation base 9 times, and every time she had to restart from scratch. She never encountered a single bottleneck in regaining her cultivation base. The rate she improved her cultivation level was extremely fast. Within a month, she had already entered the internal elixir realm. The Cloud Hall. Letitia Ning. Where did she get this flood dragon puppet? Raven asked. Lady Poisonblood, who was standing beside him, also looked at Letitia Ning with admiration. As the leaders of the 4th grade sects, they knew clear as day the significance of a flood dragon puppet to a sect. In times of conflict between sects, the summoning of a flood dragon puppet was usually the key factor in turning the tides. It was a powerful and strategic weapon to employ. Letitia merely chuckled and said, "Oh, so you wanna know, huh? I'll tell you unless you agree that Dragon Soar Arena belongs to me." They just couldn't let Letitia take the Dragon Soar Arena. All the important people present were 4th grade sect leaders. The Dragon Soar Arena was a much coveted prize. Letitia's request definitely put the pressure on Raven and Lady Poisonblood. They dared not underestimate Letitia as a simple internal elixir realm cultivator. Letitia had mastered the Sutra of Empyrean Goddess, and they were all familiar on how incredibly powerful this technique was. As soon as she regained her original cultivation base, she would surpass them completely. Furthermore, there was an extremely powerful figure in the Cloud Hall who had her back. However, it was unlikely that Letitia could take the Dragon Soar Arena that easily. The tension was thick in the air as no one wanted to give ground. Several minutes passed since Letitia and her colleagues arrived. Now a massive ship appeared in the sky and started barreling towards them. The way the ship moved was strange. It sailed in the sky as if in a way of teleportation, constantly shifting and leaping from one space to another. Letitia pouted and complained out loud like a little kid, "I knew the people from Ethereal Spirit sect would get involved." After the ship drew to a stop, 7 men flew out of the ship and descended elegantly. They were all clad in soot-black robes, and their appearances and expressions were exactly the same. These were the septuplets of Ethereal Spirit. The leader of the Ethereal Spirit sect didn't come, but he did send the septuplets of Ethereal Spirit. Raven sighed. The 7 warriors were septuplets, their souls eternally bound to each other. Although Raven could deal with any one of them in a one-on-one fight, he could never match the power of the 7 combined. After the 7 warriors descended from the gargantuan ship, they all bowed to Letitia, Raven and Lady Poisonblood, all in sync with each other. They apparently were polite and possessed good manners. As the only 5th grade sect in the central region, the Ethereal Spirit sect was humble and always kept a low profile. The 7 warriors stood in a neat line beside them. No one dared utter a word. But everybody knew that they also came for the Dragon Soar Arena. In any case, the most powerful sect usually didn't have to say anything. Their raw aura and strength spoke for themselves. It's just a godforsaken dragon soar arena. Why does everyone get all nosy? Raven said while scratching his nose under his mask. What? Just a dragon soar arena? Then what do you think you're doing here? You might as well just give up now. Lady Poisonblood felt oddly irritated. Now, why should I give up? You want to take me on, huh? Raven muttered with an icy tone. Landing a firm gaze at Raven, Lady Poisonblood said, Raven, are you saying you want to start a war? There were a lot of sects present in the central region, and also a lot of countries. But most of the sects overtook the countries, possessing a lot of power. If a war broke out amongst sects, it would be fiercer than the strife among countries. The war would plunge the common folk into misery and suffering as the central region would flow with blood. The central region was once in turmoil during the past war. But with the emergence of several fourth-grade sects, and the ethereal spirit sect, the situation soon stabilized. Raven was flustered upon hearing Lady Poisonblood's words. As a matter of fact, several fourth-grade sects were desperately trying to catch up with the ethereal spirit sect. With Letitia accomplishing the last level of the Sutra of Empyrean Goddess, she might as well lead the Cloud Hall to the 5th grade level. The fragile peace the central region currently enjoyed stemmed from the delicate balance among the powers within the central region. In fact, once the balance tipped over to one side even a fraction, a war among the sects was inevitable. After a short wait, the people from the mysterious Luna Hall had just begun to arrive. Finally, Letitia just smiled gracefully and said, it seems that it is indeed time for us to sit down and enjoy a nice, long talk. Zen had no idea what was transpiring outside. At this moment, he was just wild with joy. In the Dragon Soar arena, Zen forged ahead, killing enemies left and right, and taking in the lucky light and malicious aura into his body. As the Dragon Soar arena just came into the world, the lucky light it had accumulated over thousands of years constantly flew into Zen's belly and filled the space. Zen could feel that his spirit became fuller and stronger. And his cultivation base surged along the way. When he ascended the 4th floor of the Dragon Soar arena, he already entered the 9th grade of the nature level, only one step from the consummation of nature level. Zen had always had a solid foundation in martial arts. This was due to the fact that he had spent a lot of time and energy consolidating his martial arts foundation. Though he was better grounded than many common warriors, he fell behind in rising his level. But once his power erupted, his level in martial arts would rise in leaps and bounds, at the speed that no other warriors could ever hope to match. Ever since he set his mind on mastering martial arts, Zen had never been so pleased as everything had gone smoothly so far. As he ascended the Dragon Soar arena higher and higher, the difficulty rose accordingly. When he reached the 4th floor, Zen was able to decimate his opponents with the blood-drinking sword. However, when he got to the 5th floor, he was astonished to see his challenge ahead, a full-on heavily armored cavalry contingent. The whole floor was packed with heavy cavalry. There might have been thousands. Facing the cavalry head-on, Zen felt restrained to get through with only his blood-drinking sword. So he summoned Lily as well. With the huge sword in her hand, Lily was a born killer. Every time she swung her behemoth of a sword, it would cut a swath through the large group of soldiers and chop them to bits. At that moment, the malicious aura and spots of lucky light poured into Zen's body and were rapidly focused on his lower body. Soon enough, he breezed past the 5th floor. With no regard for anything else, Zen rushed upwards the 6th floor. After he reached the 6th floor, he found it strange that it was empty. The divine texture array of the 6th floor apparently hadn't been activated yet. Is this the top floor, then? Zen wondered to himself. He didn't expect this would end soon, as he hadn't gotten enough lucky light to improve his level. He was now at the peak of his nature level, and only with a bit more lucky light, he would be able to enter the illuminating soul realm. Haha, finally we arrive at the top. The cyan dragon who remained mum finally spoke. Zen glanced around to check his surroundings. He soon found a circular divine texture hanging by the sloped ceiling. He turned to the cyan dragon and said, "You still haven't told me why we're doing all this and what will happen when we conquer the top floor." At this time, the young master who was at the premium stage of the internal elixir realm was rapidly catching up. If he failed to climb to the top, he'd be in great danger. Do as I tell you. Now, get closer to the circular divine texture, the cyan dragon ordered. Zen nodded in assent, and then walked towards the sloping wall. He stopped and stood still upon reaching the oval divine texture. As soon as he stopped, a tiny flicker of soul was infused onto the divine texture. It then began to revolve slowly. Suddenly a flash of light poured forth and went directly towards Zen.